I asked her to break out the bills, and that's it.
Okay.
That's the number, and that's
Prepaid.
that's paid via mortgage escrow, which is way lower than I.
Okay.
But they're okay.
Yeah, no, there's no power.
So did you see that? You sent me that salary. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute. Oh, and you know what? I have a printed
Are
copy.
we live? Ready live?
Fire sale. So many people are moving down.
We'll
there.
wait
Yeah.
another minute
Now
for
they're
Ed, and I
fine.
actually printed those, that survey out.
This is the only thing on the agenda.
Mhm. Oh, I wish.
Oh, really? Oh, then I won't sit here. I thought it was
Yeah, you're up
just us.
first.
Oh, all
I
right.
think you're up first.
Yeah.
Yep, you're up first.
All right.
You by yourself?
No, I don't, Ed. So are these changed from the ones that I was reading?
Not significant.
Okay,
I'll go over.
okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's scary.
Mm-hmm. I told her, I said, so now I never even thought of tornadoes down there. Bad enough I gotta worry about the other child with earthquakes.
Yeah.
Now I gotta worry about the tornadoes. It's like, oh my God.
Well, the one in Cornwall back in '89, that was wicked.
That was.
I had a
so
friend who
insane.
was 20 minutes from his house, and it took him an hour and a half to get there
Yeah,
because he had to crawl and climb and.
yeah. I will never forget that day as long as I live. I remember looking at the sky and it was that like
Green,
color.
weird green.
I'm like, oh man.
I was on the phone
we're
to somebody in New
trouble.
York, and it went. I'm like, oh, something's wrong with their phone system. Walked outside, I was like, and it was still. Remember, it was just still.
Well, that's the difference between daytime and nighttime, like Jessica said. I mean, the big issue for them was,
They're asleep.
yeah, they're asleep, and then
Yeah.
sirens are going off, and then.
What's it called? Because she was telling me Oklahoma and like Nebraska, or Tornado Alley, that part of Nashville or Tennessee, there's another name for the tornado area there.
Mm.
Because it comes in, there's a mountain or something. I don't know enough about the topography yet, but it just goes in
Funnels
there
right down.
and it just funnels in. And it's,
Connecticut apparently gets a lot of them as well, but they just skip over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But remember, we had the back-to-back. Great Barrington got wiped out. Remember the whole fairgrounds
Yeah.
got smoked.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, East Nashville, it actually got hit worse than probably Germantown overall for the housing. I mean,
Really.
because there's just huge apartment complexes that
Mhm.
are brand new. In fact, right a block away, Tennessee is building an enormous new library complex that's just down the hill from the Capitol. Because these guys are 2 blocks away from the park that's in front of the state capitol where Germantown is, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh.
None of that,
Nothing.
no.
Yeah. Well, that's the serendipitousness of it. You never know.
And my
If I
daughter's
figured
like
out where the
crazy,
bathroom
so
was,
I
so-
guarantee you they're in the process of buying some vault to stick into the ground because she's a crazy person.
Who's this?
Katie, my daughter.
Your daughter.
Yeah.
She's down there?
Yeah, they just moved this summer.
Oh, welcome to Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Now he got transferred out of New York,
Oh.
and they're in Nashville, which has been great. Except whoever thought of tornadoes hitting them? Least of all me.
Any word from Ed? Is he? Okay.
What I didn't understand was, I heard that some of the 2 people that were killed in the tornadoes were walking on the street.
I don't doubt it. I mean,
I
if
mean,
you
but why
go
would
out
you-
and that hits you.
Yeah.
And it's
Well, you go
interesting
down
because
and lay on
I-
the ground on that.
We went downtown, like at this one section where all the music places are, and all the bars said, well, yeah, we just finished our sets and kept on going.
There's other copies coming out of that.
No, I mean, there's nothing in that. Same
Bye-bye.
thing in Nashville, they're out wandering around at 2 and 3.
This was updated from last year.
3.
Looks like
No.
it.
You would
A
think
lot.
that you would get a
No, I'm
sense
talking
of
about
Oh,
something.
sorry.
You're right.
I guess we're ready.
I'll text him, but you can call it.
All right.
Okay, yeah, so we'll start at 13:06. Call a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. And we'll go right into sewer ordinances and regulations.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
The floor is mine.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know that all of you were here started was about 5 or 6 years ago. John Casey was chairman, and there were some issues he wanted the ordinance updated. And so at that time I said you should split what regulations and ordinance. And he said, I don't want to do that. I need to get these problems resolved. So I worked up a new ordinance. And then the sewer commission had other issues. They ended up with I guess a line break going down 341 towards the river, and I think then they built the sewer line up on Maple Street Extension, and it got dropped. And then perhaps a year ago, maybe a little bit less, John, and I think I don't know if I saw an email back and forth between John and Melissa, and asking me to make some changes, and I said, geez, I had done this so many years ago, why don't we start from there? So they took a look at that, I think, but then after some further conversations, we decided we would try to split what I consider to be regulatory issues from enabling issues. And we came before the Board of Selectmen maybe a year ago, maybe not quite, I don't know what it was,
It was
maybe
November or
January,
something.
yeah. And asked them if the board would be willing to entertain that, because I don't want to spend all the work doing regulations, if in fact the board was not comfortable with that. And I was given the direction to proceed. So I did. So what the current status is near as I can tell, is probably in the 60s, maybe the early 70s, well before my time, when there was federal clean water money and the state DEP was getting organized and was starting to regulate sewer plants and require towns to separate storm water from sewer, so on and so forth. They came up with this model ordinance, probably in the 60s, 65, I'm guessing. And eventually, somewhere along the way, I believe the town of Kent adopted the model ordinance. There's stuff in your ordinance that dates back to statutory references that were changed 20 years ago. And then I think what happened was when Lori was first selectman, Lori Schiesel was first selectman, there was some modification, some adjustments to it, but nothing substantive, nothing really significant. And so what you really have now is you have an ordinance that, and then there was some amendment maybe a year or so ago, 2 years ago, about having alternates, available alternates. But basically you have something that was originally drafted probably in the 60s or early 70s by some bureaucrat at the DEP, and I represent this sewer commission, but I also represent, for years I represented New Milford, which is a much bigger operation, and Brookfield, which is a much bigger operation. And they rely on their regulations, and when there's issues that come up, they deal with it through the regulatory process, not through an ordinance. An ordinance usually requires Board of Selectmen approval, town meeting approval in this case, and it's just a very cumbersome process to make adjustments on the fly. So what I did was I took your ordinance, your current ordinance, and I sent you both a red line and a clean version of that. And if you want me to walk you through those, I will.
That'd be great.
If I make them up.
Sure, absolutely.
And the regulations that were drafted and went to that public hearing a few weeks ago, they're much broader in scope than the ordinance is now. It covers a lot of other issues that have been of concern to the commission and to their consulting engineer Bart Clark. So I'm going to try to refer to the red line version, okay? Which I guess you have. It should be dated 3/3 up on top. Yeah. Okay.
Can I stop you for a
Yeah,
second?
sure.
I was part of the group that Jeff was referring to, and I think, did you not, you came before us as well, earlier?
Before for the new board?
For the new board, right?
It was only on the belt press part.
It was
Yeah.
On the
Yeah,
belt
it
press,
wasn't
but
on
a lot of this history, and we did get into this.
Yeah, we talked about it. I
So I
think
just
that-
wanna start with the
yeah.
premise that I think I'm okay with splitting them out,
Yeah.
and so I think that's the first step.
Okay.
It just makes them less cumbersome, because when you have someone who's trying to hook up and things like that, this way, it separates what's obligated, you know, what you need to know. I mean, that's like the rules of operating.
Yep.
And then
Right.
the regulations
supporting.
are everybody who's going on the line and
Right,
all the
the
things that you
detail.
need, like fog and et cetera, et cetera.
But
So
are
it just makes
these
it a lot
all of the
easier.
regulations? Because it didn't seem like they were
No, that's what that's the
This is just
ordinance.
chapter 50, I'm sorry.
That's the ordinance.
That's
These are
the ordinance.
these are the
The
regulations, and
41
these are
page
complete.
document
These
is
are
the-
complete.
the
Okay,
regulations.
that's-
They have not been technically adopted. We've gone to public hearing.
Yeah.
And then there was, somewhere in the editing, there was a little glitch that I tried to straighten out, but I don't think it needs to have another public hearing. That's a sort of clarification or correction, I guess. So substantively, there's only one or two changes I mean, it's worded differently. It's probably worded more modern, in a more modern way, maybe a little differently organized, but I don't think substantively it's much different.
You mean the ordinance is not?
Yes, substantively, I'll tell you where it's different, okay?
Mhm.
It's really only different in I think 3 or 4 places. Basically, if we can just start with I'm again looking at the red line.
Yeah.
That language that's in paragraph 15-4A is generally right out of the statute, which says the sewer commission would serve as the water pollution control authority. Because years ago, probably in '78, the state statute started to talk in terms of water pollution control authorities. So this simply says that the commission has the powers of a water pollution control authority. The membership in B, there's 6 elected members and there's 2 alternate members, or 2 alternates.
Yep.
The language I took pretty much, I didn't change it except to move to, the alternates were in a separate amendment. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Do you need this?
No, Ed can have that, yeah. We're looking at the red line revisions to the ordinance.
Okay.
Okay. So it's really just consolidated, B just consolidated the membership and the alternates into one. And this is where I made the change because they're elected officials, the sewer commissioners
Yep.
and the alternates.
Yep.
And the original ordinance said that if there was a vacancy, it would be filled by the, and I thought that was inconsistent with the statute, and I think Randy agreed. So I've taken that language out about vacancies, and then paragraph C is new. I'm pretty sure it's new.
I'm sorry, can I stop you again?
Yeah,
Just going
yeah,
back to
yeah,
B.
yeah.
You've crossed out things and you've left things in.
Right.
Which are not complete sentences or thoughts.
Oh, where's that?
Well,
Might be
let's
my
see,
mistake.
midsection where it says, commissioner hold office for 6 years from the date of their election. And then you have read it out, the
Shall hold office.
1,
think
2,
'cause-
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down.
I think because it's a continuation of the
At
sentence.
each subsequent biennial election,
Yeah.
there shall be elected 2 members of said commission
Uh-huh,
to hold office for 6 years from the date of their election.
period. And then you start with, in the membership of said commission of such
Oh, no,
vacancies.
No, then it
No.
should start any member
Any
of
member
the
of the commission
commission,
being-
maybe remove for cause.
Okay,
Oh,
but
well,
you,
that-
maybe I'm not clear, so why is that underlined and not crossed
So-
out?
We have is yours 3-3? We have a
3-2.
3-2.
We have a
Yeah.
3-2 red line.
3-2.
Yeah, I don't know, that may have just been,
All I know is
The
that
way
it
it-
reads correctly on the.
yeah, that should be.
All right, my
yeah,
concern is
yeah,
more just
Yeah,
that it's
that should be crossed out.
written right,
Yeah,
written
yeah.
well, and it just didn't
Yeah.
look.
I don't know, no, that should come out. That in the membership of the commission should come out. I mean, on mine, I don't know why it printed that way. On mine, it's stricken. Okay.
Okay, so then the next sentence is any member of the commission.
Any member of the commission, yeah.
Okay, I have a question on that.
Yeah.
What is the criteria for removing somebody from the
Well-
board if they're an elected official?
That's a problem to me.
Right.
I didn't, when I was not trying, I was really trying, my task was to separate the regulatory from and not to change the town's ordinance. I didn't change that, but if you struck that, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I
Because
just don't understand,
It's like this.
it's not even this board, it's every board.
Yeah.
Right.
no, how do
The
you
question
remove-
is, how do you remove me
elect-
from this
How do you
board?
remove an elected
Right.
official? There's no real procedure for that.
And there's no statute on that?
Nope.
Really?
Not that I know of.
Tar and feather, huh?
Well,
In
no, it's right now, I mean, we have somebody who's on the board, but what was the, can't remember his name
When
now.
he showed up,
He came to one meeting
never showed up.
and never came back. I mean, granted, he's been sick, I will give him his due.
Yeah.
However, he hasn't corresponded, and I totally forget, every time I see him, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta call him, find out. But we are totally at the point to say, obviously, it's too much for you right now, I understand, but we need another
Well,
member.
I might
to be on.
suggest, at least in this, that if that's the case, it's just another step. So if you wanna remove somebody, you come to the Board of Selectmen and say, these are the reasons, rationales for you're doing it.
You know-
If there's the only thing you don't wanna get into is having it be, there's a faction that wants somebody off
Yeah,
because they don't
right.
like them,
Oh,
or they
I
don't
agree.
want them,
No, it has to
and then
be-
all of a sudden there's a lawsuit because,
Right.
Over the years, I've bumped into this with other issues, other towns, not here. And you're an elected official, you're elected for a term. I mean, it's almost there used to be a lot of, what the heck do they call those cases? They all started, XRL would be somebody who claimed the office and the other person had the office
well beyond us.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
move to
yeah,
what's
yeah.
germane, which is I just
Yeah.
wanted to see that that's cleaned up somehow.
Well,
so that,
I would say remove it. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't want to change that because I didn't feel that was.
I would say remove it then.
Yeah.
And
My
then we can
task.
figure out how
Yeah.
in the future.
I mean, because then what they would have to do is they would either have to ask the person to resign.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Or if they move out of, so for example, let's say you're elected and you move out of town. You're no longer an elector.
Correct.
I think then you're automatically off because you have to be an elector.
I would agree.
You also
Okay.
have to be a resident of Kent to be
Well,
on.
yeah,
Well,
to
as an
be
elector.
Yeah, to be I think you do have to be
You have
one,
to be a
to
resident.
hold elective office. But if you were just a guy who never showed up at a meeting, and they can't make a quorum, you gotta ask the guy. Somebody's got to ask the party. Somebody's got to ask the guy to resign.
Right, and there's a mechanism in place with the parties to say, look, I
Yeah,
don't want you to
yeah,
endorse this
yeah.
person on the next go
Yeah,
round.
yeah. But it's a
So-
6-year term. I mean, a lot can happen in 6 years.
Well, that's true.
Yeah,
Um,
6 years.
yeah.
can be a
Well, I
long
think if
time
you
for
strike it, and
somebody who
then
doesn't come.
maybe it's a bigger question to
Yeah.
all boards as to,
Well,
or all elected, how do you?
Okay, so I'll make that change.
All right.
Next one? Okay. If it was an appointed board, that might be
Yeah,
different,
I
but
get it.
this is elected, okay. So section C is new, I think basically new. I just simply wanted to sort of formalize the fact that there's a chairman. I don't think there's anything in the current ordinance that says that. And that they can appoint a clerk, to take their minutes and whatnot.
Who's the current clerk?
I think she is.
You're the current clerk.
Yeah. They've had collectors Debbie's the current collector, but they've had other independent collectors over the years. And then basically establish what a quorum is, and then say that they have to hold meetings in accordance with the
Yep.
Freedom of Information. So that's just really to just sort of give them some guidance as to what they need to do.
So can we just
Yeah.
go back to the second part, who need not be a member of the commission and such agents and employees as it may require and determine their qualifications, duties,
Right.
and compensation. So what does that encompass?
That means that they can hire people to run the sewer plant and to be, to do their operations.
Okay, and so currently, the person who's operating the sewer plant is paid by the sewer commission?
Correct.
Okay.
There's a plant manager and a plant assistant.
Right, and when you,
And they pay her, I'm sure. something,
Yes.
and pay Debbie
Yes.
something, yeah.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joyce, I'm sorry, Joyce, I didn't mean to point my
You know,
finger.
Pearl, you know, that.
Yeah, my wife would kill me for that. Hashtag Me Too movement,
Okay.
okay? I mean, that's actually, to be also, that's in the statute, that they have that authority.
Okay.
Okay.
But
And
is there any responsibility on the Board of Selectmen's side to make sure that their hiring procedure is done properly? Or in accordance to the way we hire?
Yes.
Is there any,
or
I mean, let's just say we have a system and they have a
Yeah,
different system
yeah.
and their system somehow creates, there's a
They-
problem.
they're-
How do
well,
we rectify
they're
it?
Well, for
normal.
example, with Lyle, you have to have a class, when
Mhm.
he went to work under the guise of, Art, he had already had a class 1, license.
Mhm.
And then he had to get a class 2, when he became, then when Art was, passed away and he became the plant manager, he had to get a class 2 license. So, and then Jesse, who we hired, I think Jesse did what, 2.5 years now, maybe, something like that, 2 years. And in order for him to, he could come on without a license,
Mhm.
but it's required that he get a license within a year, that he has at least a class 1 operator license, and then he did get that, now he's working on class 2.
I'm less concerned with the technical components of how you hire or what your needs are for someone. I don't know whether there needs to be an alignment of policy standard hiring practice that we undertake here that translates to your commission. I just don't know whether
yeah,
it's
like
should
is
or
there a job
advisable.
description
The-
and
Because
employee?
God forbid you hire somebody and you don't know, didn't do a background check or didn't do something that is in our
Well, we put
policy and
together-
then all of a sudden we are now.
Did we spell that out more carefully in the manual of, like, I mean, there are a list of requirements that must be met by,
You have some sort of personnel manual, I think.
yeah.
Well,
It
and
currently does not match what the town has implemented, Chris, because what the town did is relatively new.
Okay.
They haven't updated their manual, but if that's something that you want them to add to the, or you feel should be added to the manual to be fair and consistent, we can definitely
Yeah.
add, we can update their manual.
okay, I'm not clear as to where the boundaries
well,
are
that's-
and
that's-
what the
Right.
rules
well,
are. All
well-
I'm saying is, as a representative of the town of Kent in a different capacity,
This sewer commission and most, well, not all of them, but this sewer commission and pretty much everyone I've dealt with, they operate as a enterprise fund, okay? And so, for example, the selectmen and the board of finance and the town meeting don't have jurisdiction over the budget. And technically speaking, they don't have jurisdiction over the operations, hiring and firing. Now, some towns try to glom on and take clawback, and sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's detrimental. But basically, they're set up. The DEP wants them to be independent, so that they have a proper budget, proper operations, and not
Monkey They're not a political football.
Not a political football, right?
Which is somewhat like the education, I get it.
Right.
All I'm asking is for you guys to make sure, and it's more from a legal side, is there a responsibility we have from town hall to make sure that whomever is under our auspices, it's done in a manner in which we all feel comfortable
I think
with.
it's between you folks,
Okay.
more than a legal question, to ask them, when you do your hiring, just run it by our
Okay,
office.
well, we can then work that
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, that's-
we've
that's
had,
easy.
I've
It's
seen,
just
I've
it's
seen
a
ones
general
where
question.
where they've gone to the personnel director in the town, they have a whole personnel director, but then
Yep.
it turns out that the personnel director doesn't want to be bothered, and just says,
Do it yourself.
Yeah. But you don't want to have, when you hire, you can't do things that are discriminatory and whatnot.
Exactly.
Right.
And that you never know.
Yeah.
Right.
So it is not, but that's something you do in town hall without.
Okay, I
don't think it
appreciate
needs
that.
to be here. Okay. And then, in that alternate, the D is new, because I don't think there was, any procedures describing how the alternates are to function in that original ordinance.
Okay.
So I simply said that they can participate, they can't
Yep,
vote unless they're
saw
seated.
that.
Vacancies, this is the new, this is new language, E. And basically what the statute says, if I can understand it correctly, is you got a 6-year term, a vacancy occurs, the Board of Selectmen fill the vacancy until the next election. And then the parties nominate somebody to fill that vacancy, okay? This reference to section 9-221 is if the vacancy occurs in a short period of time before the election, you know, who how, you know, in other words, the vacancy occurs in October, the election is November. What happens there, and how do you nominate somebody for that position? So that's what 9-221 deals with. To be honest with you, I didn't quite fully understand it, but basically I wanted to say that you fill the vacancy in either the membership of the commission or the alternates by the Board of Selectmen until the next town election. Okay.
And again, just want to make sure that that ties into our same practice that we do here. And I don't know how that's, I mean, as an example, on planning and zoning, there was a vacancy a month and a half after the election, and then it was filled.
By whom?
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen appointed, right?
Yeah.
Which is the same process that
Right,
we're in.
so that's just consistent, okay.
There may be actually be a special statute on
Right,
planning
for
and
P&Z,
zoning.
yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, I can look that up. Okay, and then section F is really from the statute, it defines the powers, it's really right out of the statute.
Couple of questions on that.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably the same 5 down or line. On behalf of the town to acquire, construct, operate sewage system or systems, to enter upon and to hold and purchase, condemnation or otherwise.
Oh, it should probably say by condemnation or otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay.
And does that condemnation process have to go through us, or is that
No,
statutory?
it's statutory, it doesn't
So
go through you.
so the sewer can do that by statute.
Yeah.
Okay, because I always thought it was a town right, not a utility right.
No.
Like the
well,
utility
well,
company can't come in and they have to go through, don't they have to go through a state process?
For a state for the utility company to condemn property, they'd get a certificate of need from the
From the state.
From the siting council.
And that's my question, is there some sort of process that needs to happen through the Board of Selectmen?
No.
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 And that's statute?
There's a statutory procedure by which the sewer authority can condemn land
Okay.
if it had to. And
Any requirements that we know of? I mean, does it have to fit their system, or they just say, I like that piece of land over there, because in the future we may build a sewer system?
yeah, that's exactly what they can say. Okay.
Okay.
What as a practical matter,
Yeah,
what usually happens is, for example, when we built when the sewer commission built the Maple Street extension, 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. We had to take the property because it was easements that had to be acquired, and although the sewer commission theoretically has authority to do it on its own, that project was a town-approved project, was funded by the town. You had to go to town meeting to get the funding for that. And so...
but those are easements, not condemnation.
Yeah, that's, well, they were, I think 3 of them, we threatened condemnation. Yeah,
Okay.
I think we ultimately didn't do it,
But you could.
but you could, yeah.
All right, it's just, that's it. Yep.
So, but yeah, I think to hold by purchase, condemnation, no, that's okay, that reads okay. To hold by purchase, condemnation, or otherwise, that reads okay. Okay? Okay. But there is a section, the process is described in section 7-245 through 7-273.
Yeah.
Okay. It's in there somewhere.
Okay.
Okay. I've done it many times. You know, in the last financial crisis, it became almost the only way to acquire property for anything, because you can never get a cooperation from the banks.
Right.
They were all, you couldn't even find the banks. if you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Okay. So, 15.5 is unnecessary. It's been taken out of the ordinance. It's actually been put back into the regs by Bart. This sort of what the purpose of the regulations are, to instruct the people and whatnot, but it's not needed, so I've taken it out.
You took it out, it's been moved to the regs, or it's been taken out of the
He's
regs?
it's been put, something along those lines, that sort of, it's feel-good language that I put back into the regs. It's really,
That's what I
kind of
thought.
unnecessary.
I mean,
What the purpose of the regs are, the purpose of the regs is to run the sewer plant. And then 15.6, that's been moved to those were all definitions, those have all been moved to the regs, updated, added to, that's all in the regs.
So there's, and I don't wanna get ahead of ourselves, we're next gonna go through
The regs?
the regs?
I don't think, if you want to, but I don't think you need to.
Cause I just have a couple of questions.
Yeah, I made some questions.
Oh, okay, we can just
Okay.
chat about those, sure.
Okay.
Okay. So, but that just gets moved to the regs. Connection to the public sewer, okay, 15.7,
Can you give me an example on item A?
on which one?
Item A. Commission may order the owner of any building.
Yeah,
Is there an example you can give me of what, somehow?
yeah.
I'm just curious.
A lot of times when a new sewer line is built,
Yeah,
it's built to abate pollution,
uh-huh,
and you order the owners along the line to hook up,
uh-huh.
okay? And there's a statutory process to do that, okay? What I was trying to accomplish, and I wanted to say that, I wanted to tell the sewer commission that if they do that, if they order somebody to hook up, that they follow the statutory process.
Right.
That's why I wanted to put the statutory reference in there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what I wanted to avoid was somebody coming to the sewer commission and saying, aha, there's a sewer line right there, I'm hooking up whether you like it or not. And I've had that happen particularly with multifamily housing projects, where they say, the language of,
Right.
the language is such that if the sewer line passes by your property, you can hook up. And the sewer plant may not be able to take it, there may not be capacity in the pipe. I wanted that to be a decision by the sewer commission. So, basically I think I changed the thrust of this to simply say that, I think it said, I think the original language said, if the sanitary sewer is there, they have to hook up. And I wanna say they only have to hook up if they're ordered to hook up, but they don't have the right to hook up automatically, okay, without a permit from the commission.
Okay, and I'm just trying to understand that the state statute sections allow the power of the commission to walk in and say, Jeff, you need to hook up.
Right, and there's a public hearing, and they have a right of appeal.
And they have a right of appeal
Right.
through the statutory process.
Right.
And that appeal goes to
Superior Court.
Superior Court, okay.
So,
All right, I just didn't understand that.
I've done that generally speaking, sewer commissions don't do that unless they have to get people on the line to pay for it.
Right.
And when the line is, back in the early days when the lines first got put in, Brookfield did that with the line going from where the old Caldros was, I think it's called now,
Yeah.
to the New Milford Town line. They ordered everybody on Route 7 to hook up, and no one
did.
ever complained.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a big public hearing. I may have one lawsuit over it, but that was all. But it's usually because of you usually want to do it because you built the sewer to abate pollution. B, I pretty much the last sentence there is where I was saying public sewers are available only when the commission has determined that they're available.
Mm-hmm. And how is that done? I mean, do you put out, like, we have a capacity of X to handle 15 residential homes, 2 restaurants, and a garage? I mean,
Well-
how do you gauge that?
They know what their plant capacity is.
Yeah.
They operate under an NPDES permit from the DEEP.
I'll give you an example. About a year ago, High Watch came to me and said, we have $3 million, we wanna give it to you so we can hook up to the sewer. And I'm like, first of all, you won't even
I'm
make it
not
out of the
gonna do
gate
it.
for $3 million.
Try Warren.
Because it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's more
Make
expensive
it
than
the
you
cobble
realize.
lane.
Yeah, yeah.
But that being said, if the situation had permitted and we could have run a sewer line up to High Watch, which would definitely be great for them, and had everybody hook up on a long, the plant would not
Would never be able
to.
Right, but I flip it the other way around, from a sales point of view. Okay, we've got X capacity, and this is what we can handle. You know, where is that promulgated? Where is that put out so that people know that they can get on or not?
Well, it's known that they can get on. They're right now in the middle of town, what I always refer to as the old fire district.
Mhm.
There are 17 pieces of property that are not on the sewer line.
So the question I would ask is,
How?
if
They
tomorrow
can.
they all went on, could they handle it?
Yes.
And then if all went on and handled it, what's the
What's
capacity
left?
left?
Well, let's say.
That's what I'm just trying to
Okay,
understand.
let me just say, I don't know I can't answer that question, but
Yeah.
let me just say for the sake of argument.
Yeah,
That south of town.
yeah.
I think the sewer goes through the field.
It
there,
does.
Does it not?
Mhm.
So let's say somebody, and I don't know if that field has been protected or
It
not, but let's say
has.
somebody was to buy that field and propose 300 apartment houses there, okay? And the sewer goes right through their property. They say, hey, we wanna hook up, we
Yep.
want 300 houses here. And that's gonna generate, 150 gallons a day times 300, and whatever that comes out to, can't do the math in my head. And they say, well, first of all, there's only a 4-inch line there. Second of all, the pipe, we can't treat all that sludge. It's up to them to decide if they can take it. And the danger is when you have people coming from outside the sewer district, so to speak, and now wanting to push the boundaries of the sewer district. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I'm just curious,
Yeah.
what my curiosity lends to is more of a fabric, meaning that planning and zoning might be good information for them to know that if you're gonna build something in the village,
Here's the
there's this capacity.
Well, they should probably, they should be
Well,
on their plan of conservation and development.
Well, it should be, but I'm just, how flexible it is, that kind of
But
thing.
I was surprised to see that you could say you don't, so does that automatically allow someone to build something and put in their own septic system within the
Now,
septic line?
theoretically, now they are not allowed to do that.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
If someone's system crashes, they have to come on the line.
Mhm.
That in the area that's.
No, what I'm saying is that an apartment complex,
yeah.
like you're saying,
Yeah,
decides
yeah.
to build and you say you don't have the capacity,
Well, then they have to go through, they have to deal with it in some other fashion. But-
which, are they allowed to deal with it in
Yeah,
a different
yeah.
fashion?
I mean, this-
You know what I'm
this-
asking?
The
Yeah.
sewer plant could put in more capacity.
That's what I'm saying, they're not,
We have that ability to do it, we just haven't we haven't
Right,
reached
haven't
that point yet.
right,
But
okay.
When Peter Litwin put that property in which was the Kent, I don't know what's there
Right.
now, okay? Maybe it was the Kent, Brian was the Kent, wanted to build a cross-country sewer.
For the record, it wasn't Peter Litwin, it was Bill Litwin.
Bill, okay.
Peter's an
I'm sorry,
attorney.
okay. But it was the Kent, it was after he
Yep.
lost
Yep.
it in bankruptcy. And they were gonna build a cross-country line, there was no, and I kinda came along and said, well, gee, you gotta push it out, and you gotta push it out onto the public highway, so it's not a private sewer line. And at least maybe this town, then the firehouse, there was a couple
Right.
of properties were able to connect to it. Plus it served as the extension up to the other industrial property. But, I remember we made him pay for it, and I think he had to pay for some plant expansion or plant modifications for 15,000 gallons worth of plant modifications, if I recall. We forced him to pay for that.
Ken School has done that too.
Ken has done
Oh,
that,
right.
yeah.
Ken School
Okay.
has done that also.
But those are things that have to be, it's hard to anticipate in advance all these things, but what's your capacity at that plant?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with
No,
you.
I mean, there's an
I'm gonna go- I'm
there's an
gonna ask Mark.
NPDES permit, and you've gotta meet certain parameters. If
Sure.
you can't meet the parameters, you gotta cut back your flows.
Right.
And those are all things that I don't have the answers to, but the commission's the ones who have to regulate that, as opposed to.
No, I know that, and again, mine was more of an overall
Okay.
fabric of if we're all talking about those numbers, then we can anticipate maybe
Yeah.
changes in the future that we have to deal with, if indeed there's gonna be growth or.
That's for the commission and maybe the town and planner to decide
Gotcha.
those things.
Okay.
I'm just really trying to say that the sewer's available when the commission says it's available,
Right.
not otherwise.
Right.
Not when Jeff Sinkwith says it's available.
Mhm.
There's a couple of spots where it's referring to the statutes, and
Yeah,
back in 15(4)E, it says, subject to the provisions of, and then there's pursuant to, in accordance with, and then here it's in accordance with. Is
Does
it purposeful, or can you clean it up so it's all aligned?
well,
Like the
he
subject to
says
is the
subject to the
one.
provisions of 9-221.
Mm-hmm.
I would leave it the same there, because that's an exception to the rule.
Okay,
Okay, so that I think is proper, and I think this other, in accordance with 221, they've gotta follow that statute to follow I think that's as well, proper
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, in other words, what I'm simply saying, that they can order people to connect as provided for in the statute, or,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I like that language is okay.
okay,
But the E is an exception, the provisions of that 9-221 are kind of an exception.
Mhm.
And really, my purpose of putting that in there is simply to have somebody look at it when you've got a full vacancy.
mm-hmm,
You know?
right,
So you know where to go.
to have the reference, yeah,
Yeah.
that's usually helpful.
Permit required, again, this is just a little bit different language, try to be more precise with it, in saying that you can't hook up without a permit. And B simply says, and this is something they may have to work out with when somebody comes in to get a permit to build to change the bookshop into a restaurant, or to
Right.
change the bookshop into a store. I'm not sure what process they follow in this town, going from department to department to department, but eventually they should get to the sewer commission for a sign off or some
We have
acknowledgement.
made that happen
Yeah.
because
Okay.
all of a sudden people were going on the line,
Yeah.
and we were the last ones to do
Right,
that.
and
So
that's
now
that's
it
just-
is part of the application
all right.
process.
Which is also the grease tank and all that,
Yeah,
you know, to
yeah,
make
yeah,
sure there's,
yeah.
and I believe the health department actually has to sign off on it, correct?
Yeah,
She does,
but
yeah.
but sometimes they don't
So-
require, if they're on the sewer, they don't, I'm not sure if the health department has to sign off on
I
it, if they're
think
on the
they-
sewer.
They used to
Really?
say they did,
Yeah.
but by law,
But I don't think they have.
It
a
wasn't
jurisdiction.
required.
If it is a restaurant use, she will not sign the permit unless she knows
There's a
that
grease trap.
there's a grease trap involved.
Well, it should be, I mean,
Uh-huh,
you know,
yeah.
depending on how big of a problem it is, but if somebody starts to change the use, convert a one family to a four family, you know, the sewer commission
Yeah,
wants to
we
know
could
about
take an
that.
example, the yellow town building there, the second floor. If that were ever to go to residential, it would completely change, the second
Yes,
floor,
yeah.
would completely change the usage system there,
Okay,
because
yeah,
it's 9 to 5 office hours
Yeah.
versus
Right.
full-time usage, so I think that's a good.
So
good
B
thing to
simply
have.
says you're not allowed to increase the volume. Then what happens as a practical matter is, if somebody slips through, the sewer commission brings them in and say, what are you doing here? And they got they can say, well, you gotta pay the use bill back to when you know, so it gives them some teeth.
Yep.
Okay, you're in violation. And then a C is really just simply say that when you make your sewer connection, it has to comply with essentially the regulations.
Yeah, that's-
Okay. So some of this was there,
Yep.
you know, 2 it's just, I reworded it, made it a little more simple perhaps.
Just on D, is there any, so just talk to me about the sewer commission comes in and they say, you know, you're off, what recourse or appeal does someone have? Because there's no state statute tied to this.
This is the most effective tool that the sewer commission has, by far. I've done this repeatedly, and it's worked like a charm. What you find out, you know, for people who don't pay their bills, it's not really such an effective tool, because you got other effective tools. But when you've got somebody who's violating, so for example, you got a grease trap.
Yeah, Ed, can you,
I get it. Go ahead.
They don't pump the grease, so it's just bypassed for whatever reason.
right.
thank you.
Or you have illegal connection. Actually in Brookfield, we did shut somebody down that came in the middle of the night, made a connection. We found out about it and we terminated them. What we've done is we've issued an order to show cause
Yep.
why their sewer service should not be disconnected. And boy, and have them come in for a hearing at the sewer commission, and they always show up or send their lawyers, and they're always with their hat in their hand saying, we're sorry, what do we need to do? They pay the legal fees, It's really been effective.
Well, I get it, but you're in the world of problems that are not so clean and easy. So my question is, if I hire you,
Yeah.
because I want to know recourse,
Yeah.
because they've done it not right or not fairly or something,
You have
what is the recourse?
You have recourse. I mean, you bring a lawsuit against them. But
So there's nothing in the town that they can appeal? Someone wouldn't come to the Board of Selectmen and say they're being unfair to me?
they can do that, but it's up to them to resolve their problem with the sewer commission. I mean, the sewer commission doesn't want to cut people off, generally speaking.
No,
I've
and
never
I'm sure
heard-
it's so
They just want
rarely
they want
happens.
the people to comply
Yeah.
with the rules.
Gotcha.
But it is, oh, Jeff, can you send, I mean, we had, just to give you an example, after the, Maple Street Extension project was built, and we took those easements, we paid pretty good money for the easements, one of the property owners was piling all kinds of stuff on the easement. And so, the question was, well, Jeff, how do you, we wanna remove that, we want access to our easement. And, it was a kind of a dicey
Putting
situation.
all the weight on the new.
Yeah, on a brand new line. And so there really wasn't an effective way, I couldn't shut off his service because I don't think he was hooked up. But, I mean, you need teeth when you go to enforce
I
these
get it,
things.
but and I know in this world, I hire an engineer,
Yeah.
goes sits with Bart, and they go, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And then they fill it in and find out something's wrong. Bart signed off on it, my guy signed off on it, now I gotta dig it up and pay for it.
Well, Bart
And
signed
that's,
off on it.
and that's
Well,
where I
that's a-
turn to,
that's a-
that's where I
that's
would
a-
have an
yeah,
issue
yeah,
and
yeah.
say, what are you telling me? And they're gonna say, sorry, these are our rules, you don't comply. So, I hate to get in the
If-
weeds,
if-
but
if Bart-
without something
yeah.
to be able to help people understand that there's some protection other than the commission saying, well, sorry.
Well, I mean, the sewer commission should, even though it has the right, it should not be exercising it in such a reckless manner as to be stepping on people's rights. I would always.
How do you write that up?
You can't, yeah. I mean, as a practical matter, what you do, the order to show cause, you have them in, they wanna take an appeal, well, theoretically, they can do
Okay,
that.
I don't mean to make a big thing
Yeah,
about it,
yeah.
it just seems to me when you give some group the ability to do something without having a proper recourse, as you have in the others, where it's based on the statutes and the statutory process in which you have recourse in, it's a little, just,
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen it ever abused, let's put it
Okay.
that way. And it's pretty rare to actually have.
I'm sure it's rare
Yeah,
to have anybody
yeah.
even be shut off.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, the problem is Bart would say you can't shut people off, and I said, well, you can. It's just a question, you gotta do it right. You just can't do it
Willy-nilly.
willing, you better call the lawyer and say, listen, we wanna cut
Yep.
this guy's rights off.
Right, right.
He has a permit to discharge, we wanna now revoke it, we gotta do it in accordance with,
Yep.
there's a constitutional principles behind the property
Sure.
rights, so you gotta deal with those. But I think it's important that they have that right. I think it's fundamentally, it's the most important thing in this whole document, is that they have the right to revoke permits that they've issued. Okay? 3 is just slightly reworded. 4, basically, 4 is just slightly reworded, just to tidy up the language a little bit. 1 was that you can't, if 2 buildings on one, this 4F, I guess it's F. If there's 2 buildings on one sewer line, they each gotta pay a sewer use charge.
That's pretty typical, isn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't in it wasn't in the ordinance, I don't think, so I put it in.
Do they have to be separately hooked up? Did I read that?
Normally they do, but there is provision for where you have a skinny lot and only one line going back. Yeah, you probably have a bunch of those
I would
in
think.
town, yeah.
There's a state statute that you can actually get the permit for two
Two
dwellings
yeah,
to go into
yeah.
one septic
Yeah.
tank or
Yeah.
into the septic system.
If there's 2 or more, like a community sewage system is defined as 2 or more residences discharging to a single system. Basically, it was in the regs now, it was in the ordinance now, I left it there, I didn't change it, so I
Okay.
just maybe cleaned up the language a little bit.
Um,
So they both have to do, so the rest of this, these provisions about, where the sewer goes and water is all in the regs now.
Yeah.
15.9, Again, that was, I've reworded that a little bit, consolidated all those other paragraphs. And then starting at paragraph 3, on page 9, those are all in the regs now. I guess it's paragraph 3A through I is basically in the regs. 1510 is just expanded it a little bit. Some of those, a lot of times people bury their manholes or put structures on the manholes.
Wow, that's not good.
Yeah,
Or pay over them at the company.
yeah. A lot of times they get buried.
Yep.
It was unsightly.
Yeah.
Again, the rest of this is not really substantively different, I just changed it perhaps a little bit. There was some typos in the references to Article 13 in the ordinance, which was wrong. So,
It looks like there's a, I don't know if that's still
Where
there,
are you?
1511
yeah.
A all,
It
it
should-
says
it should read-
duty,
It should all duly, duly, it
Yeah,
should be duly,
like
yeah,
an O.
okay.
yeah.
Duly authorized agents or employees. Yeah, I took, the superintendent, I don't know, see, you have two, it may not always be a superintendent, so. I mean, substantively, I don't think there's any real changes in those. Penalties and enforcements, paragraph 12.
They look pretty straightforward.
I raised the fine to $250, which I think is it used to be 100, now it's been raised to $250.
Yep. So that makes sense.
And that's a very cumbersome process.
To get 250?
Well, you gotta have, you're supposed to have a issue a citation, and you're supposed to have a panel.
Cost you $450 to get 250?
It costs you $2,500 to get 250.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Jesus.
And then, so that's there.
There's
All
just,
right.
there's a little, you got that funky, there's like no space between chapter ordinance.
Oh, okay, well, it should go say, of this chapter, it should go comma. Yeah, I think that'll come down, okay.
Almost looks like
Yeah.
it's on there.
6 has been moved to 15.8 about the sewage connection being revoked. And on 1513, I revoked, I don't think you need that. And 15.4 is pretty much just relocated what was already there. The permit system, I don't think you need, that's in the regulations, Dan. It really didn't mean much to me, to be honest with you.
I'm good.
Okay.
Was that for fees or something?
No, I don't know why it was there, it just said there was 3 classes of permit applications, but then it didn't say anything about it, so that's in the regs though.
But it's in the regulations.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Jean, you said you had questions in the regulations?
Just from a broad sense, the, definitions are at the end.
Right.
And I checked other regulations in town, the
Right.
floodplain regulations are up front, the
Right.
P and Z are after the basic administrative, and the subdivision reg are after the purpose and authority, which is sort of the administrative. And then each of the regulations, sort of from a formatting style standpoint, does something different with the definitions. I'm trying to head us towards aligning so that when the public looks at a set of regulations, they don't read them all differently.
The reason I put that there is because the definitions are the least important part of the regulations. No one ever looks at the definitions other than me.
And that's funny, because that was the first thing I looked for. I was like, well, where are the definitions?
Well, the
How
problem
am I
is when you
supposed
read
to
the definition,
understand?
you see the definition of slug, or you see a standard of, I mean, we could look at the definitions. What really happens is the sewer commission wants people to apply. Wants them to fill out the application form and wants to process the application. They want and most of the time it's gonna be, in Kent, it's gonna be domestic sewage. So you're not worrying about arsenic and all the barium and all that stuff. 99% of the time. You wanna worry about, the biggest issue now is grease traps, I suppose, the big issue.
Yeah.
You want to make sure people aren't disposing of, well, it's not really not in the regs, wipes and stuff, but no one ever looks at the definitions. The only time you ever look at the definitions is, what's a complex? Okay, we're getting a 4-family here. How do we handle the building? Well, maybe you look at the definition there. It gives you you needed to figure out how to do the building. But I mean, let's look at the definitions. You look at them. They're like, no one in their right mind is going to understand those definitions. I mean, you got to look at. They're going to blurry eyed, and they're going to miss. They're going to miss the first step of apply, which is to apply for the permit. You know what I'm saying? That's I think why I put them in the back. In land use, what is a lot? What's front line? What's setback? Those are important because you need to, as you read the regulations, you need to have those definitions in your mind to understand the regulation. But for the most part, the definitions the reason they're in the beginning now is because in the 1965 ordinance, whenever that model ordinance came out, that's where they put them. And it's just, you're thumbing through 12 pages of definitions to just get to the meat and potatoes of the regulations. That's why I put them at the end. And I guarantee you, no one ever will go through those definitions to try to figure out what they have to do with the sewer commission. They'll come to a meeting and ask them what they have to do.
Yeah, I just think procedurally, because and you said it perfectly, the definitions define all of the terms as you go forward and read the regulations. And for somebody who's putting in a subdivision, let's say, they're gonna want to find, they're gonna read the regulations in reference to how things are defined in the regulations, and it makes sense, and it flows the same way in all the documents. I just feel like that we have all of these documents that are town documents, and I'm somebody coming in to build the 300 apartments down in the flats, and I'm going to read the flood plan regulations because I have to read them because of where they are. I'm going to read the P&Z regulations. I'm going to read the subdivision regulations. I'm going to read the sewer regulations, and they should all be aligned as far as like how things are organized. And I understand what you're saying, that the focus is to get people to apply, but the purpose of regulations is to lay out the detailed rules that support the ordinances. They're really not to get people to apply.
Well,
From a
So what if
documentation.
put a line in after where they need to be for definitions, go in the back or something, so that
there's
you
an
know
index.
that they're
There's
there.
an index. There's an index there.
I know,
Yeah.
I know it's in the index, but just.
Table of contents.
There's page 2, there's a
Yep.
content.
These are the.
And state regulations all have the definitions up front, and they all.
And I know, I will say in Jeff's defense, that when people come to go hook up to the sewer, if you're not hooking in a grease trap, you don't need to read through all the fog information, and
Right.
The process of going to hook up to the sewer, we need to have the application process more up front as opposed to the definitions being in the front as well, only because they get lost with all that
What
information.
you really need to know when you're coming into town to hook up to the sewer is, number one, you can't touch the sewer unless you have a permit. Number two, this is the process by which you get a permit. Those are the most, I've never had anybody come to, I've been doing this for 40 years. Never had anybody come, is that 48 years? I don't know, it's been a long time. Come in and talk about the definitions, ever.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and you go to a zoning meeting though, you do. You say, whoa, this is not a subdivision because the lots weren't divided after 1956. It's a much different approach. And most of the times, if you do have, I mean, you do have individual homeowners, but if you do have somebody with a big project, it's an engineer that's looking at your stuff.
Exactly.
You know, it's not Joe's six pack or,
Right.
you know. So my approach is to hit the people right where it counts, what they need to do, and that's why I start with the application process. So you can't do anything without a permit. Here's the application process you got to follow.
But just historically, the only ones who have come online are over at Stewart Farm, Kent Schools, faculty housing. There really is none. Morrison Gallery, okay.
Please come on.
So anyway,
There's been
I-
actually a few of them, surprisingly.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
is this project on sewer? Is this on sewer? This
What,
building?
town?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they came on at some point, under the old order.
Yeah, I'm just talking
A long
about
time ago,
Yeah.
but
what and where and how, but, okay.
I mean, I'm pretty adamant on that, that I think those should not be.
I remember
so,
that.
I mean, there's not a lot
But
of
I don't
them,
care, it's you,
but
it's
there are
not my
different
call.
things that-
Yeah, I guess I was talking about more about the developers coming in who wouldn't know the regs,
Yeah.
or wouldn't do the definitions. I'm talking about people, you know.
What's happened,
most
what
part.
also got this whole thing, to have that information up front is, you know, and we have tied it into zoning so that
Yeah,
they
that's good.
know.
That's
this is-
really
You know,
good.
this is what you want to build a building.
Yeah.
These are the people you
Yeah.
need to go see to look at all these applications that you are going to eventually have to fill out.
And
So-
the other point I would make is that if you're an engineer and doing the big project, these definitions are the same in every town. You know,
No, I know.
I mean, pretty much, you know, they're, I mean, not 100%, but by and large, a slug is the same in every town. A grease trap, a fog is the same in every town.
And again, I don't have any specifics other than generally, there are a couple of places where you're talking about charges and fees. Is it advantageous to actually include the table, like the fee table chart?
In the regs?
In the regs?
No.
And then change them when they change?
Well,
Because these regs are gonna be changed internally, correct?
By but the fee, there's a, what they should probably do if they wanted to get sophisticated is, to have a fee chart, which I think they do.
Yeah, no, they do,
Yeah,
they do.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, should it be referenced in, like, item C, table 5?
Probably not, because it changes.
Right, but then you update it. I mean,
Well, yeah, they
if
change
I
it.
understand the process we're going through presently,
Yeah.
it's allowing the commission to be able to change these at their will where they see it fit. So they could be updated every 2 years or
They could
3
be updated
years.
every year.
Like zoning,
Yeah,
they could
yeah.
go for review, so
Yeah.
when that happens.
What, the regs or the fees? The regs or the fees?
Well, both, actually.
Generally speaking, the fees are separate from the regs. It's a fee sheet. And there's a statute dealing with the adoption of fees,
Yeah,
okay? Which they've complied with over the years. I've done legal notices, we've had public hearings on those.
yeah, all I'm saying is if
Yeah.
I go down to pick up the regs, that I
Yeah.
have the whole fee charts and all the tables to them.
They could just give it as part of their handout. I don't think it needs to be in the regs.
It doesn't have to be referenced. I mean, it's like, for instance, in planning and zoning,
Yeah,
it says, as per chart or table or, so you can reference where and what you're doing.
I mean,
That's just something that jumped out at me.
I
Yeah,
know we
yeah.
need to have a feature, cleaned it up and stuff, because right now what happens if someone comes on the line or puts in a grease trap,
Uh-huh.
and Bart has to make 3 inspections to make sure it's,
Right.
it's been hooked up properly, we've been paying him. It should be the customer.
Right, I saw
paying
that.
him.
That's
Well,
fine.
it should be
Things like that, so-
recoverable, it should be recovered by the customer should not be paying him, they should be paying you to pay him.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
yeah.
So, and my one question about the fees then, I know that's why you're probably here, you're just interested. The fee is set by the water use, correct now?
The fee is set by the commission, which is based on.
Sewer
By the meter, water
Sewer-
going
sewer
into
usage
each
is
building?
water in, water out.
Mhm.
Is
But how do you know how much water's coming out of each
Aquarium.
place?
the
That's
fees-
only water in, right?
Correct.
So you have no way of knowing exactly. So my question would be is, in the case
I'll
of the
talk to
street.
Alyssa.
No, that's okay, but no, but there's other places that have swimming pools and stuff like that, can they?
Water in.
Exactly.
Water in is water in. Like, for instance, if I go out and
I
I'm,
understand that, yeah.
I'm doing my flowers every day, that's sewage.
Do you ever see that changing?
No,
No.
It's pretty typical.
It would,
very
it would be very difficult to change it, to be
Okay,
honest with you.
so
And I
Kent
know-
School right now then has, how do they tell you how much water they're using?
It's through Aquarian.
Okay, so
Everything
where?
Well, they have the private, they have their
They-
own wells.
I know, but they
Yeah,
have.
school has a flow meter on the,
Yeah.
going out.
Right.
Okay, so they get charged for that one flow meter out of their main wells? And that's what their
Out of the
rate
main
is?
sewer. They have their sewer.
They pump out of the campus across the,
Right,
they have a flow meter on
okay. Cause then we had problems with the storm water
Correct.
that's taken, I see by the new
Yes.
regulation.
Yeah,
That's-
no, that's been taken care of.
Right.
The school hired a couple of engineers
Right.
that came in and repaired the pump stations that where the problems were coming from.
Okay.
I mean, how any sewer commission sets and handles rates is always, it's always difficult, because there's always you do a bedroom count, well, you got the old lady who's been living in the house for 50 years, all the
Right.
kids are gone, you know? It's always difficult, but the statute says that one way of dealing with it is to use water meter readings, and has accepted that, okay?
Right,
And in the other towns I've had, at least, where I think New Milford Hospital, at one time at least, had a lot of water going up in the air through their air conditioning, or through, somehow it was being dissipated into the air.
Yeah.
They put some other meters, they came to the commission agreed to allow them to have other meters, so they could figure it out, and they did that, and then they developed perhaps a more fair billing system. But for the general person, you know, everybody's washing their car, everybody's mowing their lawn, everybody's
Watering gardens.
watering the plants, and it sort of works out evenly across.
no, I
the
mean,
board.
let's say a car wash came
Yeah,
into Kent,
yeah.
right, but they had to go under the water recycling
Right,
program.
right.
They
Yeah.
wouldn't be discharging all the water that they're using into the sewer system.
Well, yeah, they might.
If, you know what I'm saying? So
It
so
would
you'd
be-
be using a lot of
That's why there
water.
isn't a car wash in town.
Right,
But if you would, but I think
They probably fall under special use.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, I mean, I've.
They'd have to
I've seen it.
negotiate
Okay,
that with
all
the
right.
commission.
And that is negotiable, stuff
I
like
think
that
it is,
or
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but I think, I don't know, one of the car washes in New Milford, I believe, even though they had recycling,
Right, they still-
discharged to the sewer.
Right, oh, they have to be
Eventually, yeah.
discharged into the sewer eventually
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
Correct.
Well, my car goes always at the end of the day getting the dirty water, I think,
Right, really, yeah, yeah.
so.
I just, let's see, page 8 of these regs, the bottom I. Yeah, the regs.
Okay.
It's I, the building sewer plan, and the terminology really just narrows it down to commercial, and I'm just wondering why not single families as well, that you would require an engineered system.
It's expensive.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
Well, how else are you gonna do it?
If
you don't have a
If you have
license.
a licensed installer, he can do a sketch plan.
Okay.
You know, I don't know do you have a licensed installers here
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
town? So take,
Yeah.
is it the gentleman on, whose name I can't remember?
Hawk?
No, well,
No,
no.
341.
Is it
Concord?
Need another part to the puzzle.
Yeah, okay.
There's a guy here who does it, I think, all the time, and he can, they just,
Well,
because
Bill
it's really
Gowell's,
just,
I think Joe Gowell's licensed, I
Yeah.
think there are a few of those.
I think Concord Construction.
Concord.
Concord, that's what I'm thinking of,
Concord.
Concord.
So,
So I'm just trying to understand this, the rationale, and I don't need to question it, I just wanna understand it, and it's because an engineering for a single family should be fairly straightforward versus a commercial or okay.
I think a lot of installers are capable of drawing a sketch
Okay.
of where the pipes gonna come out of the house and where it's gonna go into the sewer. as opposed to, you know, a project like this where you have to have lines in this.
Okay, I was just trying to understand
If
the,
if they find out, if they find
Grease
out that
trap in,
it's,
the gobble came and put the
if they
whole
find
thing
out that's
in,
gonna
made
be
a drawing.
insufficient, they have the right to change that regulation if they
Okay.
want to.
that's all I just had.
I mean, I don't know, I know how much lawyers charge, I don't know about a engineer, but it can't be that cheap.
So is on page 34 for basic charge, are those, I saw residential unit defined, but I didn't see commercial. Is that defined earlier that I missed somewhere?
What,
Page 34.
34,
The
yeah.
different classes of users that was taken out of the end of the
For the basic
ordinance.
charge, number 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Commercial and industrial units are defined on page 38 of my copy.
Okay.
Okay.
So that would,
So
And are these preset, or are these, they're already preset,
they set
right?
them. Usually the commercial, I mean, I don't know what your rates are, but, this is very typical. For example, if no water flows at all, the person still has a bill because they have standby service. That's what the basic unit charge is supposed to get. And, a lot of times the commercial unit is charged a little bit higher than the residential unit. I don't know what Kent does. I'm not 100% sure that's entirely fair, but that's what they do, everybody does. So did I answer your question, Jean?
sort of.
Okay.
And then, so is restaurant in here?
Yeah, so. And number 2 on the basic charge, or are you looking for definition? Residential, commercial, and restaurant.
Right, I'm looking for the definition.
Oh, I see.
Nope, I don't see it. There's residential dwelling unit.
Yes. Nope. Yeah, it should be defined.
Your concern is what, in paragraph 2,
The word restaurant.
These are not
The current
defined.
sewer use charges.
The basic
And
charge,
what page are you on, 34?
34.
So as a perspective, Gene, would you say residential, a single-family home, or it could be 4 units? It's a residential. It's multiplex, I don't know, a couple of words that you're using here that are not defined as to what we are, what one could
Yep.
be.
So
Like even
there's a
special use, what's a
residential.
special user? I guess that's anyone outside of those definitions. Like Club Getaway would be a special user.
Yeah.
High Watch
And
would be a
school.
special user. Kent School would be, yeah, anything that's a huge,
Or anything that doesn't fit these 3. So that goes back to the 15.5 that was repealed, which doesn't really define. It just says that there are 3 classes: private, residential and commercial, and industrial. So I think that needs to be defined.
Okay. I mean, I don't, I'd have to look at that. I'm not sure. Hang on one second, okay.
There's like residential dwelling unit,
Yeah.
which means structure, portion of a structure,
Current sewer
which,
use charge. I think that was something that Bart put in, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me look. I gotta get a better copy of that. Let me see if I can find my original.
Yeah, that's something that actually Bart had edited in. Mine was substantially different than that. So, I mean, I guess we can look at that, yeah.
And then just a, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Grammatical. Instead of at the second to last line in that number 2 under the basic charge, you would
Yeah.
put multiplied by and not times. That would,
Are your restaurants covered under food preparation establishments?
I think what happened there, mine was substantially different. I had the sewer commission shall determine and establish such fees and charges following public hearing as required by 7255. The commission may prescribe a minimum annual use charge or basic charge based solely on the availability of sewer service, and may fix use charges based on any other combination of factors deemed relevant by the commission, including but not limited to yada yada yada, one of which was design flows. And then I think what happened was Bart changed that. I think that was from Bart. I'm assuming it was. This change here, this language. And he was trying to, I don't know, I think he was trying to be more, I think he was trying to describe more of what you actually are doing now, or trying to do, I think is what he did. I mean, he's describing the current user system, but okay, I mean, we can look at that again. I mean, I'm happy to revisit that.
Yeah.
I think what he was really trying to do was to say, he was trying to make it more user-friendly. I think that's what he was trying to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Whereas I don't care about that. I wanna just have it nice and simple so we all can understand it.
Bumping back to page 33 under section 11, use and charge and connection fees. At the bottom of A, which is really where I'm curious about, is revenues. Because we don't see their books, we don't do anything with your books. And it speaks to shortfalls where you charge more to cover. And then, but if there's a,
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, page 33,
33.
at the bottom here of section 11.1A at the bottom. It talks about shortfalls and increases, and my question really is, because it says or reserved, so let's see, revenue surplus, if any, may be used as a source of funds to offset charges,
Right.
or reserved for the fund for capital projects.
Right.
And the question that I have is, what's the threshold, and how, as a user, do you know what that threshold is, and what advocacy do you have or not in determining whether they save a lot of money or not?
Generally not much.
Yeah, I know, but I'm asking,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
should there be something, so, I mean, as an example,
Yeah.
if I'm the guy running it and I'm more conservative than most, I want a war chest. I
Right.
want a war chest to make sure that my capital program is sufficient enough to be able to get the machines that I need, because I know I'm gonna need them.
Right.
But the user's like, you're charging me, and you're sending none of that back, Garrity. I need some of that to offset, because I don't want these. So where is it that John Q, tied into sewer, can sit there and say, well, I think you should really look at not so much capital, and I just don't know.
I mean, they theoretically, they should have a budget.
They do have a budget.
Yeah.
They do have a budget.
And then theoretically, the charges should be designed to fund that budget. So if they would normally budget, let's say they budget $200,000, I'm just picking a number,
Yeah.
$200,000 a year to capital items or capital reserve.
Mhm.
I'm a big advocate. I don't know, most of my clients don't do it. I say you should fund depreciation.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of that.
Yeah.
But that throws up the rates.
Mhm.
I think that's my language. I was simply saying that if they have a deficit, they'll pick it up in the next fiscal year, and if they have a revenue, they'll either apply it or they'll use it for capital reserves. I mean.
Again,
Yeah.
where you know the rub comes
Yeah.
is when somebody gets in there and does it their way, and design without rationale, if you will,
Yeah.
that is, like I gave the example, I might collect more money in capital than someone else who's like, well, I wanna offset it for the users.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
I
why
don't
you
know how
have six
we,
commissioners to decide that.
okay,
I mean,
but,
they have to come to some agreement on that, don't you think?
well, I guess so, that's the process.
I mean,
Yeah,
they,
I would-
Finance doesn't have anything official, do they, for the town?
Mm-mm.
So maybe that's something in the future they could both work on, but I mean, the Board of Finance doesn't have something, so.
Right, but the analogy's different because I, as a taxpayer, can sit in the Board of Finance and say, I don't like how much money you're keeping.
yeah, but the ratepayers can say that as well.
Well, the ratepayers can say it, but they don't vote anything other than voting each year, is that what it is? Comes down to
They-
voting for people,
well, they
get
vote.
Garrity out because he keeps too much money for
Yeah,
capital?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but 6 years from now, but,
Okay.
I don't, I mean, to be honest with you,
Mhm.
here's what happens. Or here's what I have seen happen.
Okay,
The commission, you know, the state wants the commissions to be financially viable and not have, and to the extent possible, not have to rely on the towns to, we need a new pickup truck, or
Right.
we need,
Right.
you know, we had an emergency, they wanna fix the pipe, we can't borrow $600,000 to, you know, we don't wanna go to the town. They want the towns to have that kind of resource, so they want a capital, and I'm not sure what the Office of Policy and Management would say in terms of what you should have for reserves. But what happens is if the sewer commission gets too much of a reserve, then the town government starts to look into it. Well, what do they got all that money for? They got $1 million there. You know, what's that all about? You know, we want that money. That should be coming to us for some reasons. Was pretty funny in New Milford. They built the whole line, a new line. It was really expensive along the river to Menastill. And I don't know, it had to be $2.5 million project, maybe about $2 million, let's say, for the sake of argument. They funded that themselves without having to go to the town to build that line, because out of because they depreciate, they fund depreciation. And they had the money, but the town was looking at it. What do you got $2 million for? You know, I said, well, because we need to build this line at some point. But I don't guess I'm not answering
It's a real catch-22.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is, because, yeah.
well, the converse is that somebody who sits way up in Kent Hollow is like, yeah, you better fund it.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't wanna pay
exactly,
for
yeah.
it.
Right.
You
Well,
guys
know,
should be
and-
using
and
it, you
you
should
go
be
to a
funding
town,
it.
You go to a town like Waterbury, because of the politics of Waterbury,
Right.
the sewer doesn't cover itself, so that, you know, it's.
All right, well, that was just a
yeah,
question
yeah.
as
I
to
don't
how
know I don't know,
that balance
yeah.
works.
That's politics, and that's local politics. But I was simply trying to
Theoretically, we
say,
should have, I forget
Yeah.
where I read it though, a year's worth of fund, year's worth of reserve funds,
Yeah.
and it costs
A year's worth of operating,
$340,000 to operate the plant annually.
that's in your reserve,
No, that's what it costs to operate, I'm just saying we should have that
As
a
reserve.
reserve as well.
right, but then you should also have a separate capital fund, right?
Correct, we do,
Yeah,
we
okay.
do.
I was simply trying to say, give them some guidances, you gotta pay attention to your monies, I mean, more of anything else that I'm trying to express there, I think.
Mhm, okay.
I mean, the problem in the past is that money, I mean, yes, we've been squirreling away money, we spent a bunch of money 2 years ago to repair things and do different things down at the plant. You know, the belt press is another thing of which we're funding $150,000 and then borrowing the rest, so. But every project down there is an enormous project, there's not
Huge,
one
right.
project down there.
And it's
that's
not
gonna
getting
cost
cheaper.
$440,000.
5 years from now, it's
I keep looking at part,
Times.
can you give me like a $5,000 project?
Right.
I mean,
Long
everything
ago.
is-
4
everything
digits,
is
not
just
5 or
enormous. I
6
mean,
digits.
And if down the road, we can put in an additional basin, which is really what we need to do, because the one that's
Mhm.
there now is cracked
Mm-hmm.
and about to have problems. But then that would obviously get that in, repair the other one, and then that would be able to totally take on any
More.
needs for the town
Gotcha.
without a problem.
I don't
That's a
know,
$500,000 project at the very least.
I don't know that Kent has ever received, I don't recall ever receiving clean water money from the state of Connecticut, from the DEP. But it used to be under the federal system, federal clean water money, and then now I believe it's under the state DEP clean water money. They won't give it to you unless you have a rate structure that is going to be sufficient to pay the bond indebtedness.
right, okay.
so they wanna make sure you have an ordinance, and they look at your, you know, they look at your rates and charges.
Right.
And there's and Waterbury is the one that always strikes me as kind of funny, but I mean, I think, at least for a while there, the sewer rates were like next to nothing, and, it was all the politics of Waterbury. But I think if they are, you know, and the DEP gets all the money for the big projects, you know, phosphorus removal and that kind of stuff, but, they do require you to be independently, financially viable, let's put it that way.
That makes sense.
Any other questions?
That's great, thank you, for me.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not at the moment.
I only have one question, but it's not about the regulations, it's the old Kent building.
Can't go.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, since that was previously on, if somebody moves in and says that they're going to be using the same amount of facility space and water, the sewer commission won't have any problem handling that discharge that they used to,
No.
correct? Okay.
No, and it'll.
And since their lines are already done and
I mean,
paid for.
to be honest with you, that has cost the commission
That's hurt.
$35,000.
No, not,
in
right,
commission,
okay,
and it
right,
hurts.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's money that
It's
we
just-
could have to, you know, finish other projects, so.
Now, would
no.
they have to apply for permits and that all over again, or just say
Hey,
what
well,
their discharge
well,
is?
no, they'd have to, they'd have to
I
get.
mean, depending upon.
Yeah, but that would be
For
more
sewer, I
a
don't
question
think
of, I mean, if it was another nursing home,
Right,
and they were just operating, they'd have to apply for a new discharge permit, but.
just
But
discharge.
but it
permit.
would be, if their engineers said we're not changing anything,
Right, right.
and
Okay.
Bart agreed with that, or whoever was.
Well, whoever, the
yeah.
commission, right, okay,
But that should be pretty much a no-brainer.
okay,
I mean,
I know it hasn't.
Obviously, we'd
Yeah.
love that to go back
yeah,
online.
yeah. But if, for example, if they wanted to quadruple the discharge.
Then it would be a totally
and
different
it
story.
overloaded the
Correct.
plant, it might be a different
Correct.
story.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
guys for-
Thanks.
Is
Thanks
there
for the
some,
time.
is there
Thanks for the
somebody
time.
coming to take that property?
Yeah,
So yeah,
Some talk?
this
They have
afternoon
a-
at 3:00.
they have
Oh,
a certificate of need, and that's been approved by
For
DPH
what?
for a substance use disorder facility.
oh,
Oh,
Where I'm
that's
going
probably
next.
through.
Well, they have their CON, and they have, the P and Z approval,
Special meeting.
yes, special meeting, so we have to stick to, thank you.
so what do you want, what do you want me to make, I think there was one change to this ordinance that we
There
talked.
are two like spelling errors and one you needed a more defined
That
definition.
section,
No, that was in the, that was not to the
Oh, in
ordinance, that was to
this?
the
Yeah.
reg, right?
yeah, in the
To
regs.
the reg, we were gonna take out that sentence out of there,
Yep,
and that was, I decided that was not necessary.
And then on page 4, duly as opposed
red
to.
is just a
Yeah.
thing.
Where's that, that's on what page you have?
Page 4?
That's the regulations,
15.
We're in- isn't that the regular, oh
This
no,
was the ordinance.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. I'm looking at it,
You making
okay.
more
So
coffee?
do you want me to send, do you want me to send you
Oh.
the version, or how do you want me to handle it?
Yeah, I guess a clean,
We should have a clean version of both.
So, no, I mean, I should
Of
run it
this.
again with these changes, I should make these changes and send it to you. I'll put a, what's today's date, 3/4?
4,
I'll put a 3/4/20 date on it,
okay.
and, do you want, is the next move, well, you guys have to vote if you're gonna send this to the meeting, I guess, at some point?
Right, and I think it'll be on the Tuesday, regular meeting agenda.
Okay,
Which-
you don't need me for that, I assume.
I don't think so,
And do you want me to come to the town meeting?
probably.
Yes.
You think so? When would that be?
May
It's in May, in May.
3rd, Thursday.
Third Thursday? Okay, I'll look at my calendar, hopefully I'm okay.
I'll send it to you, Zach.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm sorry to take so much of your time.
No, this is great,
Okay.
meant to be.
And I haven't heard any
we're not gonna talk about because we're in a special meeting.
No, I just.
But thank you.
I'm just saying something under my breath. As I pack up my papers.
This was the recent COG salary survey.
Because it would
Um,
take into consideration and,
Figured it would be good to have when we get to
Yep.
the budget.
the money from there and then on the sewer as well. And re-landscape the whole restaurant. You know, spend a fortune.
This one, I think there might be 2 copies in there. It's just the COG salary survey, the most recent one.
The
Meter just for the information.
bright side of it.
Thanks so much for spending the time.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm gonna pop out for water and.
Is this yours or Alyssa's? It doesn't look like
No,
something.
those are Ricky's.
It's too colorful.
It's too colorful for me.
I think that's yours.
Oh, thanks.
Do you want me to follow up on with meeting with the commission? or-
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. The next meeting is next Tuesday
Okay.
at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So,
Where?
next door,
Okay.
you'll have to travel a great distance to get there.
He might, you never know, he might be out in California the day before.
I'm not going anywhere.
You say that all the time.
All right, we're good. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thanks for your work.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the
Yeah,
10th.
it should be.
Tuesday is the 10th.
Right, the 10th.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate
Can you put me on the agenda for the sewer meeting on Tuesday?
Okay.
You have to be on the agenda.
What's the address?
What, no public comment?
What's your address?
100.
Oh, 100 North Main Street.
Oh,
Okay.
great. Thank you
Okay,
all.
all right, thanks.
Thanks.
Anyway, sorry about the other night with the volunteer stuff. so.
Oh.
When I was taking out.
Oh, no, that was fine, because,
I didn't know if there was something more formal you and Jean needed me to do, or if they're gonna.
no, that was more than
Okay.
what most people do.
Is somebody can let me know when meetings are?
Yep,
Okay,
yep,
thank you. Anyway,
I hope so. Yep.
appreciate your comments, guys.
Yeah,
Helps me in what I gotta be doing for the kids, so,
there you go.
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Hi. So streetscape. We're still waiting for,
A walk around?
DOT, yeah. DOT is the
Why?
holdup.
Why are they so slow?
Just getting the schedule, getting
Did you get a
scheduled
name of the
into-
person that's
We think
definitely
it's,
doing the walk around?
yeah, it's, I have her card. It's the same person who does the encroachment permits. Gina Gerenbach, it's in there.
Give me her number.
Mike from Malone and McBroom has been trying to,
Because otherwise, we'll just do the walk around without her, because we're getting later and later. and
Yeah, I'd
later.
say we just have to get that done and then bring her back
And
for whatever she's got.
I'll give her-
What's her input anyway?
because it's Route 7. 'Cause
But
it's
her
state
input
road.
is what they can and can't do?
Yeah, well, since everything's on state property.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're sort of a key player.
All
And that's
right.
from Malone and McBroom. They need.
Yeah, that's their
they
job
need-
to make sure to coordinate with them. We're just
And that's the-
piggybacking that.
Right, that's what they're trying to do, and they're just getting,
We'll see if you can effectuate that.
Yeah, if I give me your
okay.
card or something.
Okay.
But if not, I think in the interim, we have to get a committee together. Were you able to get all that?
That's sort of what this discussion is
Okay, go ahead.
for. How do we think that we need a full building committee as the, as the project moves forward? If you read the contract with Malone and McBroom, their preparation of the construction RFP, so they're gonna do that part. Could the Board of Selectmen be the reviewers of the RFP, and then the RFP goes out, and then included in the RFP is gonna be some sort of project manager? Do we need a committee to then, I don't know if a committee's gonna be cumbersome or if a committee's gonna be helpful, because it's a different sort of project from like the Firehouse Building Committee, where there were decisions and change orders that happened all along the way. the nature of this project, I'm just facilitating some out loud thought.
Is the underlying assumption that what McBroom does, we do? Or are there going to be some changes?
Well, they're gonna be, delivering us an RFP for construction. And
Right.
we would review the RFP and say, yes, this is good, no, this is not, we wanna add or take out or however.
I'm sorry, let's be, just so I'm clear, we wanna add or take out what?
From the RFP.
Yeah, but what? Taking
Let's
out
say
a
they.
curb? Taking
No,
out
no,
a?
no, the work, the construction work, like, let's say they have in there a part-time project manager, and we think it should be a full-time project manager.
But the reason they put a part-time manager in there would be because of budgetary constraints. So if you put a full-time person, a curb comes out, as an example.
Possibly, yeah.
And if a curb comes out, I think it would be better to have somebody technical dealing with that
Right.
than us
Okay.
making those calls,
Mhm.
or at least making those recommendations to us.
Mhm.
Maybe we make that final call,
Mm-hmm. That the
But the
building committee makes
recommendation-
recommendations to the board.
because I would imagine with Route 7 and 341 and however this is all gonna align, there are gonna be some hard choices to make.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If those choices are cast in as they were in the last 3 or 4 different committees that did this, it's gonna be more on aesthetics than it is actual
Correct.
components of real material.
Mm-hmm.
And while there may be some aesthetic calls,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should really rely on people who know what they're talking about with respect to the material, because the public has spoken that they want to have granite curbs and concrete sidewalks. So I anticipate the budget not fulfilling the needs of the town, or the thrust of what was asked for. And then there's going to be, has to be somebody to recommend to us, well, this is what we think is the best move in terms of achieving what we want within the scope of how much money we have.
Mhm.
Now, it could be that everything we do fits perfectly into our budget, and that's great, but I don't think I've ever seen a construction project work that way.
Right, which means do we shorten it then?
We do whatever,
That- you
they
know what
may
I'm saying?
recommend,
That's-
I think the first recommendation would be from a technical perspective.
Yeah.
And then we would have to determine whether that warrants it, or do we go to the town for some changes?
So do we want to take the next 6 days? Do we want to figure out what we want for a building committee size? And then
Mhm.
charge them at the meeting on Tuesday?
Well, didn't we
How do
talk
you
about
want-
last time we saw no more than 3 to 5 people? And didn't we talk about reaching out to all of those people who had been on the prior committees? Have we heard anything from them, or
There,
have we?
so it was sort of informal. I didn't really,
Okay.
I guess maybe I wasn't clear that we wanted to make formal requests, like a formal reach out to all of the committee members of all the streetscapes, so that is
Well,
my
okay,
fault.
I just think we need 3, probably 3, but maybe, and 3 technically oriented who can speak
Mhm.
Rick and
Mm-hmm.
Eddie's language, is what I would think. And it makes sense to me, rather than going out to the whole public and saying, who wants to be on this 3 to 5 group,
Mhm.
to reach
So
out to the people who were on the committees before,
They have all
just
the
a simple
history
email and
and-
say, we are going to do a building committee.
Mhm.
It's not actually going to be a project committee, it's a building committee of 3, and we want to know if you're interested or not.
And what do we want their charge to be?
Well, I would like to get something like you have at some point,
Mm-hmm.
a map to finalize what is approved, what isn't approved, what you looked at, you know what I mean? Cause I have nothing, you know, as far
Okay,
as,
sure.
yeah. And I would like to get that, and that way when we're doing the walk around,
Yeah, Mike's actually said that he he would get us something at that meeting that we
I
had
mean,
with
it
him.
doesn't have to be I just would like to get some plans, see what is included in the towns, what was approved, like as a map, not in wording and writing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I can lay it over something, so we can get started, because it's getting late.
Yeah, and okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't get too many people on the
I'd say
committee,
3 is probably appropriate.
because then you're gonna end up not moving.
And as to their charge, I think it's that committee's mission to oversee the build out and recommend to the Board of Selectmen the best and most optimal plan within the budget that we have been authorized to spend.
Now, did you say only concrete a few
I think
seconds ago? Was that?
well, that's what was the majority was with I believe, and we can go back to the minutes, but I believe the recommendation from the Board of Selectmen was to look at concrete and asphalt.
Okay.
But I
all
think
right.
but given that, while that was my preference, the majority of people in the public wanted concrete. And
Right, but at the meeting though, didn't
at the
we
meeting,
leave it, they were gonna do
that's right, they were gonna spec out.
both?
Yeah,
Correct,
and Mullen and
okay.
McBroom, that's what they're doing.
Right,
Right.
bids for
Right.
granite and concrete with a bid option number 2
Right.
of asphalt instead of concrete.
Okay. But it didn't say anything in any minutes or anything of sections could be and sections cannot be?
No,
That
Correct.
was
No.
discussed, but they're doing the plan as one
One
Okay,
one
that's-
and the other, right?
or the, well.
Well, I don't even know if it's
There, if
or,
you
but, yeah.
start another building committee, it could be one and, or one or one
No, I mean,
combination of,
Right.
or one.
right, I
Right.
don't think there were either of the streetscape committee's recommendations included a patchwork of
No.
some
No.
asphalt, some
No.
concrete. It was
both
gonna
their
be
recommendation
either-
was
right.
granite and concrete. And in fact, the final one was granite concrete with a edging of Belgian block.
On the inside?
On the inside. So, I think really what we need is a group to get together, get this spec'd out, we need to get this moving, whatever the expense is, we've gotta match it to what our expense are, and then if we have to make a hard decision of shortening it, changing it, whatever,
We can still do that.
well, we can still do it, we
Right,
can also,
okay.
we will,
Mhm.
can also bring it back to the public and say, this is what our findings are, and if they still wanna go ahead, then we gotta figure out a way to do that, but,
Right.
Okay,
but I think it's important if we get out today, just to email to everybody that was on it and say, we're looking for 3 people. As I said to the last meeting, my preference would be technically oriented people, not aesthetically oriented people. I think this is a time now that we know aesthetically what we want. Now you need to
Building committee.
now you need the building committee's project is to build it out and watch it all the way to completion.
okay.
So when's our next meeting?
Tuesday.
Huh? Next Tuesday. So by
6:30.
next Tuesday, we need to form a committee.
Yep.
And by next Tuesday, if you can have that meeting with Gina, that would be great. And if not,
Yeah.
then proceed with the 3
Yep.
and you and Rick, and let's just get it going. And then we'll McBroom and McBride will have to. I still don't get their names right. Sorry.
Right.
We'll have to.
They have a different name now too, because they were bought out by
Okay.
British.
So that's why I just would like.
So,
to
but they
map so I
need
can
to
start
back
looking
end,
at it to see where we're going.
the DOT.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Now, the survey plan, is there an official survey map that when
Yes.
Hawk did the survey?
That
Can I
was-
get one of those, or should I?
yeah, we should be able to get both those things from Mike.
Okay.
So I think that everybody on that committee needs a full package of what
Yeah.
was
Right.
spec'd out to date.
Yep.
And then, and go from there.
Okay. Budget.
Budget. Can we update where we are timeline-wise? We have,
2 weeks from yesterday is the Board of Finance.
2 weeks, say that, 2 weeks from yesterday. Yesterday was Monday. No, yesterday,
Tuesday.
Tuesday, thank you.
Tuesday.
Well, I was here, remember?
There's a, right.
From yesterday.
2 weeks from yesterday.
So you have 13 days.
Okay.
And we have one more meeting.
And
That's our regular meeting.
when is
Right.
Board of Education going to be in here? They have a
Board
meeting
of Finance.
tonight.
They have a meeting tonight, and I'm assuming there'll be a Board of Finance 2 weeks from yesterday.
Right.
Okay.
And we haven't, obviously you know that we haven't seen anything from them.
No, I see that, okay. So, how do you guys want to proceed?
I don't know, but I have to leave in 15 minutes.
Okay, so,
I'd probably be back soon, but
Well, let's do this to make it, you think this would be right if you only have 15 minutes? You
Yeah.
want to go through anything other than salaries
yes,
that you
sounds like a
thought
good
was
idea.
jumping out at you?
That sounds
That's
like a good
fine.
idea.
Okay. That make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead and shout out, so on. On the first page,
Mm-hmm.
so we're at Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Probate.
Yep.
Board of Finance.
Got it.
Treasurer.
It's just the Board of Voters, the registered voters seems to grow pretty consistently. I mean, I get that we're in an election year, so, I have it's just more of it may be too petty ante for you, but spending all that money to feed people during the election is a little bit, they never used to do it, and I have participated in elections, and usually there's something in the beginning, but people used to bring their own lunches. But,
Yeah, I agree, and if we're doing this sort of equitable dive, I think it's reasonable to do the equitable dive.
Say
Yeah,
that again, equitable what?
dive, just
Dive.
like
Yeah.
not saying, well, this one's only,
Right.
this is such a small number that we shouldn't,
That we shouldn't
it's not
do it.
worthy. I think anything's worthy of looking. Except that ladybug is not part of the process.
So, my recommendation would be to bring that down
Yep,
considerably. And I see that they've done $100 one year, and then it went to like 900 and then 186. And again, I get that it varies from year to year because of elections. You can see that, but maybe half that would be appropriate.
so do you wanna change? Do we normally push it back to those departments to change it, or do we decide that
Well,
we're
we have
gonna
the
change it?
discretion to do anything we want.
Okay,
Out of courtesy and explanation to these, yes, makes sense, but I don't think we need to sit in here and talk to them about why it is. You can have that discussion with them, or they can come to us if they wish, but,
so you wanna, cut that to 500?
I'd cut that to 500. Unless, Ed, you,
no. Okay.
Under, oh, go ahead.
and just conferences under that line too, it's, it was
Yeah, it's
1,800.
really high.
And I totally respect Karen's perspective of going and learning new stuff. It's just, and she even said, to her credit, she said that it's, it's something that it's planned for the worst case, not worst case, but the best case scenario of utilizing all that, but.
Right.
So I would say just cutting that back to 2,500 would make sense to me.
Under Board of Finance, I think there's money to be saved under the town report.
Town report,
Yeah.
Board of Finance, yeah.
I think we could,
Well, the town reports, they didn't spend anything last year? That doesn't make any sense. Oh, that's this year, sorry.
Yeah, it's
They
still
just haven't
not
spent it yet.
year to date.
Yeah, because it's not.
It's been spent.
It's been
I think I
spent?
just
And the
signed
same
the-
price? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty consistently the same. We put it online, but basically we do print, it's printing costs? Les?
It's a stipend to do the report.
Mm-hmm, okay. So just to give you perspective, we used to spend, I think it was about $2,500 to have it printed and pushed out, and now we compile it and
Right,
put
it's
it
printed
online.
in,
Print it online and
in-house,
print it
right.
out here.
Yeah.
We make a few copies for the annual, meeting, and then the rest is online.
mm-hmm.
And have they changed auditors, do you know?
I think
Are they
we're
contractually?
We're still in a multi-year,
Well, it's usually a 3-year system, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So okay. I mean, that just seems pretty inexpensive for what I've seen, so, okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with the report.
Overall, Barbara, put together the postage, and it's like $11,000 that we spend in postage.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how we can, it would reduce it to if we used a postage meter. It just feels like a lot of money in 2020 to be paying for postage. I know there's statutory requirements for things to be mailed. I don't know if, I'm not sure how to parse that out, because it sort of depends on the department. I feel like there's money to be saved there. And I can talk to Barbara offline about it.
Yeah, I see that as almost like, if you see that we've talked about it before, there's a better Xerox copy you can make or something that you can do to streamline it, then by all means makes sense. But at this point, I think pretty much everybody's postage is pretty well calculated over time. And as you said, there's statutory regulations that require notifications and but by all means, if Barbara sees that there's a way to save it, and I think everybody has to buy in though.
Right.
Department-wise.
Right. Barbara gave us this 6-year look back for the assessor.
Yeah.
Did you guys get that?
Yeah, does this fall under salary, or what are we doing?
No, I was just,
Looking at operations?
yeah.
Okay. And what line you specifically?
Yeah, I guess I'm, there were a couple of lines that I was looking back at.
Data processing is the one that seems to me that's jumped out. It's, been rounded up to 380, 100, 230. It's budgeted 70. Of course, it's not done for the year. They've dropped that to 600. It seems. I'm sorry, that's mileage. I was off. Data processing is.
That line 140.
Yeah.
About 220.
Data processing seems to be, is jumped.
Mm-hmm. And that 16.9, I think, probably includes her cloud web hosting piece. Oh, I thought there was something in here that was where she had been trending down over the years, and
Well, mapping
maybe
is
I'm not seeing
one that, again,
right, and that depends on if she's an evaluation year, right?
no, tax mapping is, I don't know exactly when she does it. But it shouldn't be a every year kind of scenario, if that's what it's referring to, the tax mapping.
Yeah,
The
like
tax
going
maps.
back 13, 14, the budget was 3,000 and this actual was 1366. Budget in 15 the actual was 1262. Budget in 16 was 4,500, and the actual was 700. The budget in 17, 2,500, and the actual was 480, and the budget in 18 was 2,500, and the actual was 560. So it looks like she's brought it down, but it still seems high. Like the last 1, 2, 3, 16, 17, 18 was an average of like $600. So that could probably come down as well.
Well, do you want to just bring that down to 15, to 1,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of these are pretty sharp.
A lot of these what?
A lot of these are,
It's minor,
Yeah.
minor.
yeah, pretty sharp
Right.
numbers already. People tend to be doing a good job. Anything jumping out, Ed?
No, but I'm gonna run to the firehouse. I'll be back hopefully there. How long do you think you're gonna be here? Another hour maybe?
Don't know.
Okay. I shall return. Thanks.
I moved on to page 3.
Yep. And I didn't really see anything
Yeah.
in these, Gene, that
Yeah,
jumped out with me, jumped out to me. As I've said before, and I think prior boards have expressed it, each department's done a pretty admirable job at making sure that their
honing down.
lines are
Yep.
are tight. Sometimes there are aberrations. Sometimes you have to buy something or you have to get something.
Right.
Um,
I guess this is a good thing.
And with respect to the grants, everybody's in with the same request, correct? I mean, these are hard requests, Joyce, that Barb has plugged in from people who responded to. Okay. And how does a paramedic work? That's a grant, right? To whom?
No, that is, where are you seeing that?
I'm seeing it on page 5, top of it. Line 347, 85807.
So I think that's the regional, that's the regional paramedic. That's a contract with the 7 towns.
So that's our portion of the 7
Yeah.
towns, and that's just
It's an association.
that's just a divider. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
And
There
who-
is,
And who negotiates that with them, the whole group?
yeah, each of the 7 towns. There is concern about that because New Milford Ambulance has been growing, and they they upgraded to a paramedic level service all on their own. So there's a potential for them to
Cover us?
to opt out, which we're the 2nd biggest town in the 7 towns.
Uh-huh.
So, and New Milford is the biggest piece. So their usage would then have to get
I see,
divided
absorbed
among
by
6.
6.
Yeah, and New Milford,
And we're the
so
biggest
for
one of that.
instance, we had 420-ish calls last year. New Milford, I believe, had over 2,000. So
Mhm.
their piece of the pie is a very big piece of the pie.
Mhm.
So it would cause this number to go up substantially. And it
Why?
just,
Because the cost is a fixed cost no matter what? Wouldn't it be based on volume?
yes, but it is, to a certain extent, it's a fixed cost. And it makes it less the Trinity Health System,
Okay, I don't need to, I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
no,
don't-
that's okay.
I don't need
Going-
the details of it, I just,
the call volume that they represent
Mhm.
could be the factor that makes Trinity say, yeah, it's not worth it for us to be in a contract all the way out here. So it could have lots of different ramifications that just make me nervous.
okay.
Was paramedic one that was per capita, or was it?
Yeah, I think it's per capita. But there's a tipping point
Yeah.
that is, just makes me nervous. There is some grant money that Susie is looking at under the civil preparedness, which is actually emergency management,
Mhm.
that may lower that number.
And I flagged the electric cost at the town garage. That
That
jump,
went up $300 something a month for the loan to cover the switch to LED lighting.
so we got a loan. So help
Same
me.
as here.
For the retrofitting of the
Yeah.
lights.
All right, I'm sorry, let me understand it. We retrofitted the lights. And
Changed
they're,
all the lights to power Eversource. Hooked us up with a loan.
yeah,
So the loan payment being in there now jumped the monthly bill up just over another $300 a month.
and the loan runs through the actual bill itself.
Yeah.
That's how they do it, okay. And so I'm assuming that this means long-term we will save on electric.
That's what we're hoping, but
So how long's that loan for?
I don't know whether it was 5 or 6 years, but we'll get that information for you. It's right in the office.
No, I'm just, look, clearly it's made with a decision to make long-term savings. It's just a big jump. And it wasn't beneficial to just pay this off rather than get a loan?
No, not to redo all the lights.
No? Why, what was that cost? Roughly?
300 times 5 years, a month times 3 years, or 5 years.
So it would have been like 20.
And we did that in town hall too, or just,
Yes.
is that reflected in this as well? In the town hall? Town hall electric. It was 10,000, 10,000, 11,000, 11,000, so we didn't get a jump in that one?
It might have been overinflated before.
The line? That's pretty specific, 10,126, expenditure 10,506, so 11,000 seems pretty reasonable, but
When were they done?
Less.
okay.
So do you think the 11,000 is gonna be
And that's the bill.
accurate?
So I mean, just in today's budget, you're gonna be over on that line then? Because that's obviously started.
Right now we're at 37 of 4,500, so yes.
Yeah, you're going over. Interesting.
We didn't have the contractor and that stuff in place before the budget last year. So the line didn't get raised up for this current year.
Oh. And that's a big decrease in the health under highway, that's just,
Last year, we had a number in
Changes.
the budget before the final number came down, so we were over
Oh,
budgeted last year.
gotcha.
And then he had a few staffing changes that changed some of his classifications.
okay.
repair and maintenance, Rick, do you usually do that at the end of the year? It's just,
We do it as we go through the year, just, I doubt this reflects one bill I just paid for one of the trucks that just came back, it's $15,000, I don't think that's in there yet, so.
but you anticipate $70,000 this year?
I'd rather not spend that much, but if something else happens, then. And if we come into the end of June and nothing needs major repairs, will be excess there.
And how about hired equipment? I mean, you're averaging, what, $8,500, or call it $8,000, and you have 15 to expend, and to date you've got 9. What's it? Can you give me an example of what's a hired equipment?
The crusher that was there last was paid out of that 9,000. And if I, what else did we pay out of that? If we need help on whether it's sweeping or if I have to hire extra sweeper, or sweepers we usually cover our sweepers, but if I go outside, well, the companies we normally use, sometimes I go to hired equipment or for the spraying. Guide rail spraying, they usually pay out of hired.
Well, can you live with $10,000 on that line? Because it seems like you're averaging.
If you knock it down to 10 now, I've already, well, maybe for next year, I was gonna say I've already spent on knocking it on this year.
Well, my thought process is, again, looking at your year in and year out, and I'm sure some years it fluctuates because there's more sand drop than not. Some years there's more chipping than not, but it still seems like your average is higher than, $5,000 higher than what you've been considerably spending.
There again, like we've talked about in the past, if we're looking at bottom line, the differences aren't that much usually.
Well, I get that, but we're looking in line by line, and over time, it's real easy to say you're not creeping up as much, but when I even look at the Board of Selectmen's lines, it sees over time how it slowly creeps up. Again, I don't think there's any, I think we've been doing a pretty good job, but here's an opportunity to just tighten a little bit more. You have no expenditure, but this is snow-related equipment. I mean, we're pretty much at the end of the season. There's nothing in that $7,000. That's where I would make. I mean, if I've been averaging, just under $5,000.
And what is that?
Just bought restocked some blades, that's not shown in there yet.
Right.
If one of the sanders needs repair or something, then that'll come out of there.
Mm-hmm. And you haven't had anything, or it hasn't hit here yet? Like you haven't gotten the bills?
Most of the repairs so far this year have been small ones that we've handled. If it came down to this year where I thought there was enough money to rebuild the body, then we would do that. But until get through April, I don't make that decision.
Yeah, and to me that's I don't know. It's seasonally related. You could get a really wicked winter, so over budgeting or at least keeping a little pad in there is not. I don't have a problem with. And what's Public Works for $7,000 that hasn't been expended?
Engineers aren't covered by project money.
Okay, so what projects do we have coming? That's going to require that.
The ones that aren't in the capital plan, if I'm doing road jobs that aren't in the capital.
The ones that are not in the capital plan, because we're assuming that that's built in.
I try to, but sometimes like the bridge numbers start coming in higher, so I'll use some of what I can out of Public Works to get the initial design or applications in, and then go with the project money once it's approved.
Okay, but you've only spent, just over 10%, one time in the last 3 years. And so the question is, why so much? You're gonna expect it to have $7,000 of expenditures for a application?
Right now, I'm working on Bulls Bridge Road, which I've been going against the capital for. If it turns out when the numbers come in that the capital money's not gonna be enough, then I would go back and transfer some back out of that public works line to cover the engineering part that we've already paid for.
Right, but I think, just from a taxpayer's point of view, if I'm committing to a capital plan of doing a bridge or a road or something like that, all those fees should be included in it, and you shouldn't be pulling it from.
Well, then I need to be your crystal ball, cause I can't guess 5-10 years out what the prices are gonna be totally upfront.
Well, I can guess right now, at least based on the last 3 years of expenditures, that it's not 7,000. I mean, I understand that you wanna be able to have that room, but, across the board in all these departments, that's what we wanna do, but we also wanna tighten it so that we know we don't wanna hamper you. That's why I would advocate in snow-related equipment. I don't think it's appropriate to change that number, but when the discrepancy between $750 and $7,000, to me, it's just a big number. And I'm not trying to take away something that.
Well, I think when we went over this initially, I think we discussed that. We went back and looked through some of the other numbers that the lines went over by quite a bit. So that 7,000 that was there got hit to keep the bottom line. If you wanna, these are just requests. It's up to you if you wanna cut it.
Well, it is, but with requests, we like to have it, if we can, that input, and then as we really dig down into these numbers, it's much easier when you look at it. I shouldn't say it's easier. It's different when you look at it just one department versus one department, but then when you're responsible for the whole thing, and trying to see how it's all meshing, these numbers start to jump out. And your department, not your fault or anyone's fault, is one of the largest ones in the, in budget.
And also what I've done in the past, if we get to the end of June, if there's any town aid money left, which is not large sums for enough to do projects, we'll transfer like engineering to those, if it's the acceptable thing for town aid. So if I had spent, let's say, 12,000 out of that line last year, I'd have to check with Barbara, but I'm pretty sure we did transfer money back out, paid for the engineering with town aid, so there was money left for the surplus. This town aid we can't carry over after June 30th.
So I would say on the public works, I'd like to see that cut in half to 3,500.
Can you live with that, Rick? And I also think that it's getting ahead of Board of Finance, because I would imagine that they would be looking at these lines too. And new equipment, you anticipate, is that still, that 4,000 is still a realistic number for next year?
Yeah, cut that, because it's something that we have that's getting old. That covers anything that's not in the capital plan again, so any of the smaller cut-off saws, blowers, trimmers, any of that stuff that
Brakes.
so when you got in the capital plan and stuff like from 0 turns on up.
And on drainage, again, the number's jumping around from $500 to $700 to $12,000. Is there a reason why that happens? 616.
this year so far, or
No,
previous years?
well, this year's only, is 700, but previous year was 12,000, the year before that was 400, or 418. And drainage is just repairing culverts, is it?
Buying the pipe and the catch basins to repair stuff, yeah. Or the stone when we're doing the installations.
Okay, and so it should be identifiable how many of those we need, or on target, correct?
Yeah, this year I have to plan on doing all of them on Bulls Bridge, cause we got a grant coming in 2 years.
To get ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where that 10,000.
So if I'm, that'll be for, I'll probably buy the materials out of this year's and then do the work in next year's, cause I don't think we'll get to it beyond the end of June.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, so I understand that. So the $10,000 that we have right now, or the remainder thereoof,
I will buy pipe
You'll be
and catch
pipe.
basins ahead of time,
right, for work to be done next year, in next year's budget.
after June 30th, yeah.
Okay,
And then
and
next year's budget, we got the money in there for stone and whatever else we need to do the actual construction work.
so can I ask why you just didn't do $20,000 next year instead of, is there,
Then there would have been 10 left over this year that you would have been, why did you not spend 10 this year and then spend 20 next year, right?
well, I'm like, you didn't spend any this year and you're gonna spend 20 next year,
Well, if I buy the materials,
yeah?
we might get to be started in June, but normally June is pretty well taken off with everybody using up vacations and everything else, so I don't too many big things done in June, but.
Well, I get it. I guess what I'm sort of reacting to is the idea of bridging, if you will, budget years to deal with a project. If you have a project, we should budget for it that year and do it that year. Now, sometimes there's going to be some things that minor things, but is it common practice to do that?
I've always done it with like chip seal stone and stuff, and if we pile it there instead of buying it directly from the plant,
Right.
we'll buy it and pile it, because if we chip seal the first week in July, I don't have any time to truck it in off new budget, so I bought it in one in June,
Yeah.
paid for it in June, and then used it on the road in July.
Okay.
So is there anything, so for snow related, do you feel like we can shave that off even 1,000 from 7 to 6? And that's one of, I mean, there is the crystal ball piece to that, but
Go ahead.
And unimproved roads. What is an unimproved road?
It's usually just gravel for dirt roads.
And they're called unimproved roads,
Because they don't have pavement
They're
on
not-
them.
not improved.
Right,
yeah,
they're not
they don't
paid,
have pave.
so they're.
Oh, I get that.
unimproved.
All right. And again, you've got a $15,000 budget, and you've only been using, a little bit more than 10% of that.
We've bought a lot of gravel out of town aid the last 2 years, so I didn't use it out of that line. This year I'll use it up.
Do we tend to use our town aid all up every year?
We have to.
We have to.
use it. So,
Well, you can't, if you give it back, they're happy.
Right, but then the next year
It's like Ed buying toilet paper for the school. He just stockpiles it and spends it out, so.
But do they do really like a dollar for dollar, whatever you give back the next year, you're not gonna get? Or do you count on?
no, it's based out how, like, if they ever get together and vote on it now, there'll be a number that we will receive next year.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't use that, up to that number by or June 30th,
Mm-hmm.
They don't disperse it.
we don't get it. So
Mhm.
we have to apply for what we spent. So they just wouldn't send it out. And I don't think, but they may be sending out checks now for half of it and every 6 months, but if they do the audit and find out that we're keeping money, then they want it back, so. Every year, zero that line down and go from into the regular budget.
And could you give us an idea as to how much annually you think over time is money that you use for taking care of some of the lines above that? So you're turning back
Oh,
30,000, or not turning back, are you having a surplus of 30,000 on average, 5,000?
It could be between 25 and 50 probably.
Okay.
Depending on the paving projects that we've done. This 25 is not very much pavement, so. So we usually end up buying gravel or stone or something like that with whatever's left there to, or like the, I know we've switched a lot of bridge engineering out of last year's, what was in the public works last year,
Mm-hmm,
because there was money left in June.
got it.
We transferred from
Mm-hmm,
public works to
yeah.
town aid, so.
So you'll take some of that, I just noticed that town aid road, that line 430,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll start,
If we know that we have that money, for sure,
We don't know.
then,
I mean,
for that money, we'll be doing some paving before the end of June.
right. I meant,
If
I
I do
was,
the paving early, then that number's low coming through the winter.
mhm. I meant for the current budget.
Yeah, right now we spent 95, it says, right?
Yep. And so you'll
So that,
be spending
If
out
we're-
that balance.
if Barbara knows that we're getting the second pavement, for sure,
Mhm.
I mean, the way the budget is done, if I can do those projects anyway, we might not get the money.
Mhm.
But we usually wait and make sure that the money's gonna be there, and then.
And the senior center repair was so high because of the whole bathroom, but we didn't, I mean, the kitchen.
We had budgeted to, pay a portion of the new furnace, but apparently they got a grant or something, cause they haven't asked me for that money.
Oh, okay.
So so instead I'm gonna reallocate that money, we do need a new, control panel for the, alarm system and stuff, so I'm gonna use that money for that to get that repair, so I will use it, but I didn't request it again.
Do we know why the, Torrington Area Health is looking like it's gonna go down? What does that even cover?
Kathy Services, that's for Kathy.
Okay. And is that like a,
She's
dispersed
there.
among the district towns?
Only the towns that use her, not every
Right.
town uses her.
Okay,
So whatever town uses Torrington Area Health,
right.
they would pay a certain amount of money for the services that they provide.
But any reason to give us
Oh.
perspective as to why it's dropped?
No idea.
No idea.
Because last year there was a item called population differential that was $3,400, it's zero this year.
What is population differential? Do we know? Not even know, just a messenger. All right, well,
So that was decreased, but it is based on per capita, and the per capita rate did not increase, so there was that differential last year.
okay.
Oh,
So
so
we were making up a deficit for something.
So that
population
was in the
went
health.
down.
Yeah, it was on the request from Torrington Area Health.
Okay.
So that's where the decrease came, it's at 0 this year.
Well, the big number that I see that's jumped out at me is the Kent Center School ball field maintenance, $20,000. I mean, from all I read about sports and kids and lack thereof, we seem to be going in a different direction. I know ball fields need tending, and I know we gave them that responsibility.
Mhm.
That's not a contractual number, is it?
The playing field subcommittee put it out to bid.
They
and
did.
provided you with all that information.
And help me with what was the?
So the fields need conditioner and
Yeah,
clay,
I knew that.
so that's why that number is so much higher.
But it's all. This also includes
And it also includes the.
mowing and maintaining it.
It doesn't
No.
include the
No.
mowing, but it includes the cost that Kent School has been paying for, the fertilization.
Oh, Kent School is paying for them.
They have been, and actually this year, they're not already, but it's not included in that price.
Okay.
So that's another component, and the conditioner and the clay is probably an every 3 year. And it hadn't been out to bid in quite some time, so, the subcommittee put it out to bid to see what it could get.
And not holding you to it, but then next year we're not spending 20 grand, are we?
That would be my assumption, Chris, no,
Mhm.
we are not.
And
We're
is,
gonna spend about 15 or 16.
That
Yeah,
would go in.
that's my.
Let me just get the subcommittee, what do we want getting out, please?
and the, is there a softball team and a baseball team?
I sent you, did you get the email I sent you?
Yeah.
Cause
and-
our emails hadn't been working, but my computer got fixed yesterday. Park and Rec in Kent does not have its own softball team, has
Mhm.
not for a lot of years. There is a regional softball program.
It's regional, okay.
Regional for recreation or for school?
For recreation, we have a
Recreation.
regional.
And do they play on our fields?
They do not.
Okay.
So do we use those fields,
Yeah.
the far ones?
Who
Oh, yeah.
pays for?
So-
I sent you that information. So the far fields are for kindergarten, first grade. We have a second and third grade team, and then we have a little league team. Thank you.
Oh, there is a little league team.
There's the door open,
Um,
you can,
yeah, it's a little one.
The where?
yeah, it's a little.
It's a little stagnant in here.
So yes, there is a little league team. Last year, it was with Cornwall, so they practiced one evening in Kent and one evening in Cornwall. And then, we played games here.
And that's from April till when school ends.
Yes, and then last year, we did have a summer Little League program, again, that was regionally, and they did use the field a little bit.
And again, this is also the elementary school one that the elementary school uses as well, correct?
They
The
use
first little field?
The first field, yeah.
And we
yeah.
are maintaining that.
That's part of the.
Part of this
plan,
process,
yes,
yeah.
So the $4,000 is for the turf management.
Which was pretty much what we've been running every year or so.
That's the additional, that's the cost that Kent School's been paying, Chris.
But the $5,000, I thought we were doing some treatment for that $5,000.
That was just
That
infield
was
work.
just, that was just
Huh?
in field work.
That was just cutting edges and weeding infields.
Yeah.
Supplies for the, I'm looking at, transfer station?
Part of that is their, the annual permits. That's the biggest portion of it. Is under there. As well as right now telephone, because they have no telephone line, because there's a cell phone there. Oh, and the, porta potty.
And the $1,000 for this year is just under, okay. Cause it is trending, okay.
I'm sorry to jump back on Eugene, but on the,
Okay.
on page 6, the bottom, the Welcome Center, is that enough money? We've been running 8, 10, 6. What's been costing? Cleaning? Is that the only thing? Has there been repairs and things like that that's been needed?
I think it's just,
No repairs, it's just supplies and cleaning right now.
And water charge?
Water
Water charge.
sewer, electric.
and we're gonna be looking into the cleaning of it, because
But there is income from that, correct?
No.
I don't think so.
From the showers?
Oh, the
Oh,
showers.
yeah.
Just
Well, that's
shower,
water.
Yeah,
So income coming out of that building is, do we even have a handle on that roughly?
have to ask Barbara.
She counts the quarters.
Yeah, a lot of
Do you have
quarters.
a revenue list yet?
Huh?
Do you have a revenue list yet?
No, we do not have a revenue list that I've seen.
We can ask Barbara. Barbara, if you're watching.
500 showers would be $1,000, right? $2 a shower.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's much over that.
Yeah, probably not.
There's-
I don't think I'm through,
I'm good too.
so we'll have Barbara make those couple of changes and then we'll come back on Tuesday for the salaries piece.
I would like, I mean, we mentioned it last time, to put in 2% instead of 3%, rerunning these numbers. I'll go back to the premise that I worked off of a couple of years ago, which wrapped into the whole salary review process, which is, to me, the cost of living is a cost of living increase and recognizes that the cost of living goes up and should not be tied as a offset or an increase or a salary reflection of how one does their job.
Performance.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, if that's how you're going to do it every year, I don't think it's fair to those who receive it and don't get any other manner in which to be reviewed for performance. That number could change some years, I mean,
Right.
the combination, but, and I know we baked it into the contract with the town crew, and I believe that somehow the same is contractually with the teachers.
They're at 3.3, aren't they?
They're at 3.3. I don't know.
Teachers?
Teachers, they're 3,
Four.
or they, I thought it was
So,
3.3.
like a $7,000 difference.
I think it's four.
What's that?
The chart on the end there, if you look at that, where it says others, there's about $7,000 interest for each percentage.
Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
thought she
I
had
got you.
run that for us. Where is that the last
It's on
page?
the
Yep, on this page.
Okay, shoot.
But I'm confused, Chris, what you just said.
Mhm.
You said cost of living is something that you're giving everybody just to maintain cost of living. If they have no other avenue to get additional money based upon a performance review, you lost me. I didn't understand.
Sure. Let me say it again. Maybe I wasn't making myself clear. To me, the whatever you use as a margin of or percentage of increase based on inflation or cost of living, or consumer price index, whatever you want to use, to me is not a merit raise. All it is reflecting the fact that we agree that the world gets a little bit more expensive and there's an offset for that. I don't think, as I think it had been to a large degree, construed as a means of giving people a raise over time, and I don't think that that's an accurate way to provide somebody with a raise. And I'll go back to the fact that I think because of that practice, we saw huge discrepancies in salaries, of which we're still grappling with to a degree, but that we made considerable changes to last year. And I would not want to see us fall into that trap again by saying 3%, and then we're going to give them 3% next year, and 3%, and then people who have made requests are just sort of put to the wayside because they're not being judged in the marketplace. They're just saying, well, you've gotten that 3% increase and you should be happy with that.
And then it's all across the board,
Does that make sense?
no matter what.
So you're saying you agree with COLA so that when somebody does come for a request, the general public can't say, well, you've already been getting higher than COLA? Cost of living or whatever measure we're saying.
That is correct. Or less the people out there, more the board's perspective that little additional is part of a ongoing easy way to adjust prices or adjust salaries.
So with that theory, and because there was no directive this year and might not be next year based upon a conversation at the last meeting, all department heads should just automatically submit increases for their people if they feel they're warranted? Or how is the process, how do you see the process moving forward? How are people supposed to get those merit increases since we don't have an official review process or that sort of thing?
Mm-hmm. Good question. I think people are coming forward. I know people are coming forward. We have in front of us probably, 4 different requests? So, and I think that that's warranted. Then we look at it from the perspective of the marketplace and whatever parameters you want to set. You are accurate, in my opinion, where we do not have a performance review, but in some situations we have commissions. We have that we're hoping that will weigh in and have a factor on the process. The challenge, of course, that we run around with is we have part-time, full-time, elected, non-elected, who's your boss, who isn't your boss, commission-based, non-commission-based. We still haven't worked that out, but I think in fairness to the work that's been done over the last couple of years, we tried as we could to get that up at least to a standard. It does beg the question, is there a better way to do evaluation? I don't want to touch that right now. We'll have to see how that's done. But I would argue for this board to put forward some sort of process in which we can help, help the taxpayer understand as well as the employee understand, what's expected of them and how they get compensated for that.
And also, I think it speaks to it can provide goal setting and show sort of the process of your path, so the board or the employer and the employee have a path that they're going down together. Like in Donna, and just to highlight your performance review, it was transparent and clear. Here were the goals that you set with the commission for you and the expectations, and then you had something concrete in your hands to say, okay, for this next year, these are my my tasks and my duties, and the stuff that I do day to day is the stuff that you need to do day to day. But in a broader sense, you can have a gives you a focus to say, all right, am I keeping on the track of the broad work of me as a professional and what I expect, what the commission expects to see at the end of the year? Do you feel like that's been a helpful process and a helpful sort of
Do I think that the performance evaluation process that they did last year and then we submitted this year was helpful to me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want to say no because I don't want to upset them. They were asked to do it by you guys because it'd never been done before.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I know what my goals and objectives are because they're all state statute driven. So the performance evaluation that we did was truly just a performance evaluation. The goals change from day to day. Do I know what I'm doing and what I need to be doing? Well, I've been doing it for 7 years, so yeah. Do I think everybody should have a performance evaluation? I do, and I think there's a way of doing it. I think there's a way of setting it up. I've always thought that. I think it's good to have goals and objectives because I think it makes your boss honest as well, to have all that in writing. So it's, it's good for both parties.
Yes, I agree. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
I
no,
just-
no, I mean, I can defend everything that I said, so I don't have a problem.
Well, I'll echo that. I think it was actually very helpful because the commissioners are the ones on the front line dealing with Donna day to day. I mean, I have the good fortune of being able to have some interaction with them, but not with Donna, but not everybody has that and understands. So for the taxpayer to understand what this person does, whomever they are, that can say, well, here's the backup. The challenge that we face is Donna and Leslie and a few others have commissions that can do that. Other people don't, and that's where I think we did a half step, but we need to do that full step to make sure that anybody and everybody that we manage has a fair shot as being understood, given goals, and trained and helped to get there. The only sticky one that I see is elected officials. And I've not really been able to, get that in my mind as to how to do that, but I would love to see how we could achieve that. I think if we all did it and we all figured we were all gonna do it on fairness and trying to do it to the best way, I think we can get there,
I agree.
so.
And I agree that it can be done for the elected officials too.
So, as to the other salaries, are we gonna deal with that on the next meeting?
Tuesday, yeah.
And there are 4 requests, are they, or
I think it's 4.
Pretty long.
4? It is pretty long.
Yeah, I think but
You
because
can
it's
have
not
a special
here.
meeting is my point, instead of trying to stick that in.
Yeah.
And that way it can get cleaned up, anything you wanna change, and then approved at that meeting to then go to Board of Finance.
True, true.
So that leaves either Friday or Monday. In order for it to be cleaned up. For the next meeting.
I think we need to talk, we need Ed to know that, so we'll get in touch with him.
Friday's much easier, Monday's much easier for me, that's the 9th.
Yeah.
Can we pencil something in, at least for now, and then tell Ed, ask Ed if he can make that? Do you want to pick a time?
Oh, I feel like I have something.
It's either he's free in the beginning of the day or the end of the day, correct? All right, so let's maybe,
And I'm at a thing all day Monday.
all day.
All
Well,
day.
there goes Monday.
8:30 to 5.
Well, Friday is, I've got midday free,
Midday won't work for Ed generally.
yeah.
Yeah.
The morning afternoon.
Is there a reason why we can't do
You can do it for
something
regular
on?
meeting, I was just concerned that it's a pretty long meeting,
But could we do something before?
the sewer commission meets before, so unfortunately
Oh.
I can't be in 2 places. I mean, you do it earlier in the day,
Mm-hmm.
you can do it in the morning if that works, but I'm not sure that would work for Ed to be
Mhm.
available all day.
Mm-hmm. We need to ask Ed what his schedule looks like.
I say we just handle it at the meeting, just to make it cleaner, easier, and then we have to be quick and good about it. rather than sticking in another one.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest. But that we need to, really move
Yeah,
through it.
so we could probably, consolidate everything onto one, maybe onto one sheet, so that we have one sheet to go by for all of the salary things, so we can sort of focus in. Do you think that would be helpful?
Sure. Okay. And I just want to say, clearly, just picking through this is sort of like picking over a turkey after Thanksgiving. I appreciate the different groups and boards and departments, because clearly what we're trying to do is tighten everything even tighter. It is, as I've said before, there's been such great management in the departments that we're down to the last gasps of finding things.
Yeah.
And clearly what's growing and has been growing is compensation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just from salary.
Mm-hmm.
It's been from
Okay.
healthcare and pensions, and
Yep.
so that's it.
Okay.
Are you gonna consider the pension request in that salary request?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the policy, isn't it?
Whole-
Isn't that part of the policy procedure?
Well, it's.
I know there's a push
policy.
I know there's a push, I feel it, to see it, to get it taken care of. If that can be done, fine. I'm not going to necessarily,
The information is on the back of that budget.
On the
sheet
back of
Barbara provided, the last page, it talks, history of revenue, would ask for some additional information.
yeah,
It's on the bottom.
yeah, I saw that. Again, I dislike doing things at last minute, and I like to see it being part of a package. I still think that there's some cleaning up we have to do from last year's transition to salaries, and this is another level. And I think it begs the question: are we? Is it the Board of Selectmen's feeling, sentiment, agreement that we are making things equitable and fair between the different, like town crew and the Board of Education, the teachers and such, or are we seeing them as standalone and different? I haven't really been able to get that.
We haven't had that.
Well, I personally haven't had a chance to really understand as to what, why, and how. But there are certainly discrepancies. I just don't know if those are, items and issues that we actually have to deal with. The Board of Education is out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
And the dealing with the unions over at the Town Highway Department is in our control, but it's only in our control every 3 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think, so I'm just giving you my reaction as to why I'm not going to jump into the policy and say, let's try to make things fair and even, because that's what they get that way. When I haven't even resolved in my own brain whether that's something that we need to make equitable.
Yeah, I think the policy and the cost are two, they're obviously tethered together, but I think we're talking about the cost because of the budget, and the policy would have to follow it. But it does seem, I don't know, it seems out of line, very out of line to me, when you're looking at comparing the two employee pools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the responsibilities are different. They're, the different industry. This is a different industry than over at the Board of Education. It's a different industry, outside of maintenance.
So how does that?
If everybody were under one, if everybody here was a teacher, if everybody here was a town crew person, I could certainly understand that, there would be a reason. Again, I haven't thought it through fully, so I'm just sort of,
So, if going up to this, my past 9.5 years, somebody who works in the lab in Rocky Hill and processes Lyme disease test tubes of methyl ethyl bacteria stuff, and me, who was sitting in a cube and driving around the state, and as a regulator, we were both earning retirement at the same rate, as would Ed, as would, you know, other sort of different industry, to use your word. Different professional pockets or buckets, I don't know what you want to call them.
Swinging around differently, the taxpayer is now asked to pay certain pension for this, and differently from here. Do they want to pay it? Do they think it's fair? Do they see that it's not equitable?
Well, I think that they get to vote on that.
But what they're seeing is just a percent. They're not seeing the actual dollar difference.
I would agree with you.
Kind of like the
I would agree with you.
coronavirus, people who are getting sick. It's skewed because you're not getting the total amount of information for people to make an accurate decision. Like Jean said, she was making the same percent in her pension as somebody else, but the amount of money would be different based on what she does. So, you know, I mean, you're looking, I think you're too focused on the actual percentage number, and what you need is the actual dollar amount. Because I think that's the only way to make it perfectly clear to the people on the outside what it's actually costing.
So instead of looking at this one comparison, because it's just a lump at the end of the budget, to have it just like a salary, here's the budget of salaries and compensation.
Well, that's how it is. It's typically not, it's not going to be presented like this. It'll be baked in, right?
Right, but I'm saying, instead of looking at all of, you know, department by department by department, look at it just as the employees, so that you can see the disparity with a town garage employee and a town hall employee. And I don't know, I don't know why I do, but I sort of take the Board of Ed, the school, out of it, and maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it should all be looked at as one big pool, but do we see individual, like the social studies teacher for 8th grade, and because I've never seen a Board of Ed budget before, but we don't see
that.
what Mrs. Starr makes and what Mr. White makes and all that sort of stuff. It's not
Well, you
down
could
to
find
that
that,
level.
but I think it does not just come down to whether you believe it's equitable to pay everybody, or compensate everybody, I should say, in the same manner. That's really what it comes down to. And if the answer is yes, well then, there you go, you do it. My hesitation is changing policy quickly so that we can get it into a budget for this year. And I get the people who want it, I totally get it. I get that feeling, but I am averse to going and changing things without really thinking them through as to, okay, this makes sense. Now, if we decide to do just one thing, I'm open to that, but
Chris, just want to just chime in and just add that we've been asking for this for a
Long
number
time.
of years, and it's been put by the wayside and ignored, you know, in my opinion. So it's not anything new.
I don't know if it's been ignored. I think it's been specifically said no.
Whatever.
And I don't think it's been ignored. I think it's been addressed. It's just that I don't think there has been consensus that the town hall employees should be compensated equally as two different groups that negotiate separately with the town. That's what it comes down to.
But that's because what you're looking at is the percentage.
It could be. I
And
don't disagree with you.
I think that if you were to look at it from a salary perspective, you would see something completely different. And it might change your mind. You know, I mean, I think it can be done. I know I did check the ordinance to see how that worked, and you know, how things need to be changed with regard to the pension, and you've got the right to do it.
You do.
You know, so.
Well, to that order, I think we can bring that up, and Ed can weigh in, but let's try to maybe tackle that. At least the pension, if that's all that's going to be.
Okay.
because that would have to be changed prior to. We can include it in the budget, but it have to be changed prior to.
The policy. Yep.
Okay, I don't know what policy you're talking about. There's no policy that says how much the town contributes.
Right.
There's no policy. So I'm confused.
So how
The
did,
ordinance says that the town has the right to
Mhm.
give employees who are eligible a pension, a retirement program.
Mhm.
It does not indicate how much.
Okay.
It lists parameters of, ages and that sort of stuff, but there's no official
so how is
policy,
it,
policy
This
procedure.
says, this is how
manual
much
that
you
says
get.
a percentage.
so how is it
Okay.
decided?
I misunderstood that.
When the ordinance
How-
was written
what?
100 years ago, or whatever it was written, and
I think
it was deemed
The
5%.
percentage was decided when they made the agreement with whoever's administering the pension, wasn't it?
Because
Yeah.
that's what it's always been, it's just that
Yeah.
same 5%, it's always been 5%, it's never incrementally changed
Never.
up or down, or it's been 5% forever,
Forever.
since it was initiated that they would offer a pension
Mhm.
program.
But it never, and even the ordinance, because I checked the ordinance, even the
Has
ordinance
never been
has,
amended.
there's never been a specific amount.
No.
It's been
Never.
left up to you
Okay.
guys to determine it, and if you wanna determine it from a year-to-year basis, I don't know that you can't.
Okay, but aren't you guys saying two conflicting things? Didn't you say that it was 5% in the ordinance and?
It's
No, it's not in the
No, no,
ordinance.
No, when the ordinance was created, the town
To
decided
create-
through the vendor to make it a 5% payment. So it's not specific in the ordinance that it says 5%, but it has never changed the ordinance doesn't indicate it, but what we've received, or what employees have received has never changed.
Okay,
A
so
number
that
is
would've-
determined.
The
So when they-
number was probably determined via a set of minutes, like
No,
meeting
when
minutes or
they,
something.
when they probably went into negotiation with the pension administrator said industry standard is 5%. And the town probably said, okay, then we'll go with that.
Mhm.
But you have the right to change that at any time.
Okay.
And what is that amount, percentage, do you know, for the
The union.
Board of Education?
I don't know.
I don't know what
We'd have to
the
ask Barbara.
contribution is.
Or, yeah, maybe Barbara. Barbara would know, I think. We'd have to find out.
All right, well, if we're gonna have that discussion, let's find those numbers, I think.
Okay.
And find out from Barbara what, as suggested, by Donna, the, amount impact is. And also what the other, other two, groups are getting.
Yep,
And then let's see what that equalizes.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yipper. Adjourned at, 1600. Thanks, everybody, for the marathon.
Thank you.
Sorry for the marathon.
So those numbers are old, those dates.